I call this meeting of the Dalles City Budget Committee meeting, May 5th, 2025. The time is 5:30. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Mays.
Yeah.
Councillor Randall. Councillor Ring. Councillor McLaughlin.
Here.
Councillor Richardson.
Here.
Councillor Runyon.
Present.
Dan Oldenburg.
Present.
Allison Schock.
Here.
Serena Smith.
Here.
Jared Gosson.
Here.
Sandy Hakerl.
Here.
Councillor Randall.
All right, we're good. All right, we're going to go ahead and elect a chair and a secretary at this time.
Mr. Council President, I'd like to make a motion.
I think we're on the same. Well, I just wanted to interject my apologies that it's not noted on the agenda, but I'd like to request the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, we
Oh,
did
it
not
is not, isn't it?
do that.
Let's do that.
Please stand if you're able, and Councillor Richardson, would you please lead us?
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. How could we forget? All right, we are now up to the election of the chair and the secretary.
I'd like to make a motion to repeat my motion of the last time I was here and nominate Council President McLaughlin to chair the Budget Committee.
I'll second.
We have a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor of Councilor McLaughlin being the presiding president of this chamber? All say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any against? Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, and now we need to get a secretary, and the role and responsibility of the secretary is,
Sign the minutes.
and that's it. No other obligation outside of that. So do we have any nominations?
I'll do it.
All right, we have Serena that has volunteered to be the secretary. Do we have any discussion on that?
Need a second first.
All right, let's
I'll
get a
second.
second. You said, Councilman Runyon said he would second that. So we have a second on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposition and any abstention? Then the motion carries. Thank you for being secretary. All right, we need to hear from our city manager. This is a budget message.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you'll all turn to page 7 of the proposed budget. The first thing I always like to do when kicking off my city manager's budget message is to note that the bathrooms are down the stairs and around the corner, and the code is 7277. And that's for everybody in the audience as well. Just a little bit of housekeeping there right out of the gate. But on page 7 of the proposed budget, as you'll see, you'll have my budget message. I always want to start off and thank the staff and all of you as community volunteers in this process. The various departments and department heads all worked very hard to pull this information together, none more so than the finance department. And I want to acknowledge that Angie Wilson is a little under the weather, but she is on the Zoom call today. She was our finance director and is still assisting the city, in particular for tonight's budget meeting. She will do her best to correct any errors I come across, and she is free rein to interject and interrupt. One of the things I wanted to note, if you haven't already noticed, is that the budget is very different than last year. Its structure is very different in how it's being presented. This budget was put together utilizing a new ClearGov software. So please bear with us as we roll out and really transition to this software process. This is the first year that we've used this new software, and I think it's really pushed us forward in a lot of different areas. And there's a couple different errors that I'll note throughout the budget book that we caught as we rolled it out. Right out of the gate, you'll see my introduction there, and I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs here. I think it captures some of the situation that our city is facing, along with cities and throughout the region. Cities in both Oregon and throughout the United States are facing an era of budget difficulties with restricted revenue growth, growing costs, the ending of temporary funding, compounding long-term needs, which are forcing cities to consider staff reductions, across the board budget cuts, pausing vital programs, and continuing to put off long-term liabilities to allocate resources to their critical and most immediate needs. The city of the Dalles, we face a more positive outlook than many cities throughout Oregon, throughout the region, due to the responsible use of one-time versus recurring funds, prudent prioritization of long-term sustainability, creative leveraging of grants to control costs, allocation of new revenues to core services, and our focused and ongoing effort at annual strategic planning. So with that work and with that diligence over this proposed budget and recent budgets, the city can look forward to fulfilling our core services with a focus on essential water, sewer, street infrastructure, and public safety operations, while also investing in our long-term physical health by updating vital systems, such as our CAD RMS program that you will learn about more later tonight, funding key economic development initiatives at our municipal airport, brownfield and contaminated properties work through the US EPA brownfield program, and continuing to pursue West Side area planning efforts and more. We can also continue to support some of our key partners that work with us together in our community with deliverables that contribute both to our success and priority key projects, such as the proposed Federal Street Plaza, which we'll get into later in the budget here. Some of the key changes I wanted to highlight in this budget, if you'll turn to page 8. And what I'll first focus on is some of the guiding principles that we use in putting together this budget. Thank you. This is maintaining an unappropriated ending fund balance equal to 4 months of net operating, maintaining a general fund contingency of 10%, maintaining a 5-year capital improvement plan for our general street water and wastewater stormwater funds. And we calculate some of the administrative transfers that we charge various departments based on charges for service provided by the receiving fund. And we'll get into that more a little bit later in the budget today. These are some guiding fiscal principles that we follow with every budget that we have. Some of the key changes, as I noted, with the ClearGov budget book and some of the new structure that you'll see here. We also established a new tourism promotion fund after the council passed some changes to our transient lodging tax, formerly the transient room tax. And so this new tourism promotion fund will receive those tax revenues. And again, we'll get into that later in the budget. We have a special enterprise reserve fund that will continue to receive tax abatement payments under our enterprise zone agreements, as well as strategic investment program dollars. We've had several shifts throughout the budget, in particular in the general fund related to facility services and IT. So the facilities department has both grown and taken more solid shape, along with the creation of a dedicated IT department. And so what we've seen here is some of those IT and facility expenses shift from one department to that centralized location. And so those are some of the changes we'll highlight here. You may see a particular drop in a certain fund for IT services because it's been allocated in the actual IT department. The special enterprise zone, if I may go back for one moment, the SIP fund, the Special Enterprise Reserve Fund, and the SIP funds that it receives follows a resolution that council passed late last year to guide how those policies or how those funds are budgeted. Some of those funds are received in the general fund, and the others are received in that Special Enterprise Reserve Fund. On page 9, there's a summary of the council goal and action plan. Each year now, we have a facilitated strategic workshop, typically mid to early November, to focus on the council's goals and priorities in the upcoming year. This is a really key part of this process and is really kind of the kickoff to putting together a budget book. And staff uses those goals and the actions within that adopted plan to allocate the resources needed to execute that. And so we really focus on, I believe, 6 different goal areas, including livability, housing supply, houselessness, fiscal sustainability, long-term infrastructure planning, and now public relations as well, which is a relatively, well, it's a goal that was added in the last cycle. And so on the following pages between 11 and 28, there's a detailed account of what those city council goals and some of the strategies are within them for reference. And so finally, in closing, I want to thank again all of you for being here this evening. This is the first night of 2, maybe 3 night meetings, perhaps, to get through this process. And I want to thank again all the staff who worked not only on this budget, but work every day in the service of this community. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the opening message here, but would turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you, Matthew. First order of business tonight is to move to certify the City of the Dalles tax rate. Would anyone like to make that motion?
Somebody going to describe what it is?
Well, would you like to describe what that is?
Certainly, the City of the Dalles tax rate is $3.0155 per thousand of assessed value. This is what this proposed budget has been modeled off of. And this is the action authorizing and certifying that tax rate.
I'd make a motion to certify the tax rate.
And do we have a second?
I just had one additional question. You're saying that that tax rate really didn't change? It's the same tax rate as last year, or is there an increase in that
That is the same tax rate.
same tax rate? Okay, perfect.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have several people at the same time. Jan Oldenburg, will use you as a second.
Yes, I will.
All right, any other questions or discussion? We're hearing none, then we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, that motion carries. We're moving, yes,
Abstain. I just got here, sorry.
we just got here and we'll get you, thank you, Mr. Ring. Okay, we're moving on to the next section, which is the public hearings. I'm going to read some script to you. So now is the time to schedule for a public hearing to receive testimony concerning the possible use of state shared revenues for the city's 2025-2026 fiscal year. Public hearings are required by Oregon law and certain rules apply. First, I will ask the budget officer to expand on the description of the state shared revenue found on page 48 of your proposed budget book. Next, I will ask the committee if it has any questions. After those questions, or if there are none, I will open the public testimony portion of the hearing. Any person may testify in support of, in opposition to, or in any other ways directly related to the possible uses of state shared revenue. After all interested persons are afforded an opportunity to testify, I will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Finally, the committee will then deliberate if needed, and I will accept motions. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Mr. Klebs.
Thank you, Chair. So as noted on page 48, we have a summary of the state shared revenue. ORS 221.770 requires the state of Oregon to apportion among and distribute to Oregon cities for general purposes a share of certain revenues received by the state. This is what state shared revenue is. These revenues include revenues from the state's highway trust fund, cigarette tax, liquor tax, 911 emergency communication tax, and marijuana tax. Typically, we opted to receive these distributions and then allocate them into the budget. Before you, I believe, is motion language to allocate these funds, specifically the highway trust funds, into the street fund, and then 911 emergency communication tax, cigarette, marijuana, and liquor tax into the general fund. This has been how we've allocated these funds in prior years, and staff is recommending no changes.
Thank you. Does the committee have any questions for the city manager? Does anyone wish to testify in support of, in opposition to, or any way directly related to the possible use of state shared revenue? Hearing none. All right, the public testimony portion of this hearing is now closed. Does the committee feel it has enough information to make a decision? If so, I will entertain a motion. Yes, sir.
Counselor Runyon to make the motion pursuant to ORS 221.770, recommending the city council to designate and the budget committee to designate shared revenue distributions for a certain purpose.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Councilman Richard, yes, sir.
You wanna-
You will all have in front of you a agenda with motion language on it.
Ah, I'm here.
Yes.
I'll restate. With the chair's permission.
Please.
Move to accept state shared revenue from cigarette, marijuana, and liquor taxes into the general fund, highway trust funds revenue into the street fund, and 9/11 emergency communication tax revenue into the general fund.
Second.
Now we have a second. Any other discussion? Any other questions? All in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Oppose? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries. All right, now we move on. Let's see, okay, we'll go ahead and have this portion of the hearing closed, correct? Yes? All right, now we move on to sections, let's see, no? Oh, we got to go on to the B section. Now I got to read another script here. All right, and this is a long one. All right. Now is the time scheduled for public hearing to receive testimony concerning the proposed budget for the city's 2025-2026 fiscal year. Public hearings are required by Oregon law and certain rules apply. First, I will ask the budget officer and staff to present the proposed budget book. To expedite the process, committee members may ask questions of the budget officer or staff at any time. After those questions, or if there are none, I will open the public testimony portion of this hearing. Any person may testify in support of, in opposition to, or in any other way directly related to the proposed budget. After all interested persons are afforded the opportunity to testify, I will close the public testimony portion of the hearing. Finally, the committee will then deliberate if needed, and I will accept motions. These are the rules. Are there any questions? Mr. Cleaves, you're back on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So first and foremost, I'd like everybody to turn to page 30 of the budget book here. This is going to be the organizational flow chart for the city. And as we go through this process, myself and staff will always try and reference the page number that we're speaking from. We are going to be jumping around a little bit. So if you do get lost, please interrupt us and ask what page we're on. It's the best way to keep everybody on the same page. So here on page 30, you will see the organizational chart for the city. This is a good snapshot of the different various departments and functions that we have here. We do have information technology broken out from the city clerk, and the remaining funds are unchanged. If I can ask you to jump now to page 87. Oh, no, my apologies, 42. It's a bigger jump than I intended. Page 42 is a revenue overview. These are the primary revenue categories that most cities have, most notably ours. They include taxes, fees, licenses, and permits, charges for service, intergovernmental revenue, fines and forfeitures, miscellaneous other revenue, interfund transfers, and other financing sources. Some of those key revenue streams are noted on the following pages. Page 43, notably our franchise fees. And as is very clear by the pie chart that's provided, the majority of our franchise fees, our biggest revenue source under franchise fees, is Northern Wasco County PUD. A franchise is an agreement or privilege granted by the city to an entity that benefits from use of the right-of-way. And so this is associated, mainly associated with the poles and infrastructure that PUD have throughout our community. But other franchisee holders include the Dalles Disposal, various telecom entities, Northwest Natural Gas, and others. On page 45, we have an enterprise zone fund and strategic investment program breakdown. The first couple pages here detail the 3 enterprise zone agreements we had with Google. One of those agreements has expired and 2 are still active. And at the tail end of page 47, we have a new paragraph around strategic investment programs and the funds received under the current tax abatement agreement we have with Google for the 2 new data centers currently under construction. As I mentioned briefly during my budget message, the City Council and the city itself went through a very robust process in partnership with Wasco County to talk about those potential uses and guiding principles for how to allocate those funds. And the City Council passed a resolution detailing policy level budget guidance for how to budget these funds and how we wanted to use them. Under the SIP agreements, we've only received the initial payments associated under the agreement. The first data center got its certificate of occupancy last year, and we expect to see additional payments probably closer to November, December. Those payments are based on the value of the data center, which we don't know yet. And so we have not budgeted to receive those payments as we don't know what they are. The guidance that the City Council gave staff with that resolution was to place the initial payment in the Special Enterprise Reserve Fund. The property tax component would be allocated to the general fund. The community service fee will be used to fulfill the needs of the city's capital improvement fund for deferred maintenance and other needs for city facilities. And once that is met, it will then be placed in the Special Enterprise Reserve Fund. And the guaranteed annual payment will also be received in the Special Enterprise Reserve Fund, but will be allocated to support this city's master plan infrastructure projects. Another very significant effort last year was the update of our water master plan, which is a 20-year plan, which really kind of allocated or really put into picture what we call kind of the big 3 generational water infrastructure investments needed at the Wicks Water Treatment Plant, the Crow Creek Dam, and the transmission lines. And so with that water master plan as a guide, the council made adjustments to our water rates. And with the understanding that the SIP revenues from the guaranteed annual payment would be used to support these infrastructure projects and mitigate the rate increases that were needed. And so the rate increase that the council passed earlier this year was significantly lower than what would be required if we had not allocated these funds as such. If you will skip over to page 55.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
a question. Back on
Yes.
page 44. Page 44.
Yes.
I was kind of surprised to see our tax revenue flatten out after a couple of years of pretty significant increases. Did our assessed value flatten out or?
I think one of the key jumps there was the ending of that first enterprise zone abatement, which may have contributed to that jump. And the assessed value of that first data center, and then the growth after that flattened out, if that makes sense.
Good. Yes. Answer your question.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Go ahead and continue, please.
If I can have you turn to page 55, there is a small error I wanted to note here. There is still, under the general fund contingency, there's still some verbiage there about reserve for future expenditures. That is not something we have going forward in this proposed budget, and it's been combined with the unappropriated ending fund balance and the contingency. So that line item and that verbiage is no longer relevant, so we'll scratch that out. We'll make note of that and replace that with the final budget book. If you'll turn to page 58. And we've tried very hard with the ClearGov budget software to landscape some of these graphs to make them a little bit easier to read, but we're still working through that process. So apologies, this is a portrait kind of graph. It's kind of hard to read. But this is a detailed summary of the administrative transfers I mentioned a moment ago. On the left, you have the various departments and the total expenditures needed by those departments. And the transfers, in particular, from the street, water, wastewater, library, or airport fund, relevant to their use of that service to the general fund to support those operations. So one thing I'll note here is you'll see utility billing, for example, about halfway down. And you'll see that there are transfers from the water and wastewater fund. Those are the services that the finance utility department provides to Public Works for the utility billing services. And so as such, we charge for that support, and that supports that transfer. Whereas you'll see over by the library, it's zero because they don't have any utility billing, and so they don't use that service. So that's kind of a snapshot of how to look at this administrative transfer. It's a good summary. I've used it in communication with our partner with the Columbia Gorge Regional Airport, Clickitat County, as well as the library district, and find it very helpful. The following pages are kind of the data or the work that is used to calculate what those administrative transfers may be. We're more than welcome to dive into it if you'd like, or we can skip it. If you'll turn to page 63, this is our capital improvement plan. Now, again, I'm going to be at a very high level here as each of our departments will present their budget, and we'll talk about many of the projects listed in these capital improvement plans. You'll see that it's a 5-year capital improvement detailing various projects at the airport, at the city's general fund, the library fund, Public Works, and a few others. One change that we will make is on page 72. And here, I just wanted to note a couple different things. Looking at the very first line item as an example, we'll see 2 marked police patrol vehicles. Fiscal year 2026, you can see it's 147. Fiscal year 2027, it's 150, and so on and forth. If you look all the way to the right, you'll see a total that may be a little confusing because it shows the total amount over those years versus the total amount if you look at it from top to bottom in a given year. And so these 2 marked police patrol vehicles do not cost $767,000. That's just the total we're going to spend, 2 cars per year over this time period. One change here down at the bottom is the unmanned aerial vehicle or drone purchase is going to be pushed out. We're looking to see if we can get a grant to support that purchase. We'll see how that plays out this year, and will be noted in the police department's budget. But if we're unsuccessful with that grant, we'll have to push the drone out further. Another example, just to highlight what I mentioned a moment ago on page 74, you'll see replace International Elgin crosswind sweeper. In this circumstance, we're looking to make the purchase of this sweeper in 2027 for $400,000. Again, to the right, it's just a little can be a little confusing. The sweeper is not $713,000. It's that purchase price in 2027, and we're saving up for it. And so if there aren't any questions on the capital improvement fund, this is a great place to go to get the specific details on what each department may be looking at in the next 5 years or so. But again, each department head and staff will speak about the specific projects, highlight some of the specific projects coming up in this next year.
I just have a quick question.
Yeah.
Do we have an established way to track these projects to make sure they're all being met on adequate timelines?
Yeah, so I mean, the annual budget process that we go through is a good place to kind of keep track of how these projects go forward. Projects do get delayed. We do allocate funds with opportunities to push another project forward, and we'll make those changes with city council approval more often than not. I think one of the hopes is with the ClearGov budget software, we'll be able to better present and track that information, not only at budget meetings themselves, but possibly on the website. And that'll be part of the continued rollout to see what we can do and everything that we can do with that new software.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
If you will turn to page 87, I'll note here that we have handed out some replacement pages for you. And so on page 87, you will see the all fund summary. and I believe you should have the placement pages on your table. And this is pages 87 to
I don't,
95.
take a look over here. I don't see it.
And as the city staff and everybody, we put this budget together a little bit ago. There's bound to be some changes as the weeks and months progress. Go ahead.
One more question. If I just pulled this off the website right at the beginning of the meeting, does it have updated pages?
Yes, it does.
You can have my copy.
And so here on the new page 87 is our all fund summary. This is a great, again, another area for a good high level snapshot of revenues and expenses across the whole city. What I might direct you to most specifically is page 91, looking at the detail for the general fund. And I have a couple highlights for you there. The first down at the bottom of page 91, you'll see intergovernmental. These are some of those franchise fees that I noted a couple moments ago. And what you can see here is you'll have fiscal year 2022, 23 actual, and then each column to the right is the following budget year. And so you can kind of get a sense of the growth of some of these revenues or expenditures over time. On page 92, you'll see a pretty significant increase in transfers out. Last year, we had budgeted about 1.2 million transfer out from the general fund. This year, it's about 5.7. That is in large part to support the Federal Street Plaza. And we'll get more into, again, those specifics when we get to that particular fund. On page 93, under other taxes, you'll see a line item for transient room tax city and transient room tax park. The parks line item in particular is zeroed out. That's due to some of the changes I noted with the transient lodging tax. Many of those funds have been shifted, all of the transient lodging tax funds, I should say, have been shifted into the new tourism promotion fund. Some of those funds stay there. About 55% of those funds stay in the tourism promotion fund, while the remaining 45% are transferred to the general fund. And that's that other summary sheet handed out on your desk here that you may find useful to allocate and track those funds. And so these line items here have a pretty big shift, and that's the reason why. If you will turn to page 95, we do have some changes in regards to transfers from the airport fund. Just wanted to make the budget committee aware that staff in partnership with representatives from Klickitat County are working to review what's called the joint operating agreement, which governs how the city and county work together in regards to the Columbia Gorge Regional Airport. So there are some pending decisions and pending guidance for how the airport will function or operate with the city and the county. And so typically we've had some of these transfers to account for some of the services that are provided. It may show up as a contractual service depending on what the results of that review of the JOA look like. So there's a little bit of influx or transition there. And those are the highlights that I wanted to give for the all fund summary. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have before diving into the city council's budget.
Yes, Mayor Mays. Got the floor.
Page 91. The PUD franchise fee is included under intergovernmental, right?
Yes.
The rest of the franchise fees are under franchise fees, but why is that separated out? In the past, those have been combined, haven't they?
I believe they've always been separated out in the budgets that we have here. The PUD franchise fees are significant. And so tracking some of the other franchise fees that we collect, which are much smaller, allows it to be a bit more detailed and kind of not get lost in the whole amount. And so that is the structure that we followed in years past. And I think that's part of the reason why.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
a quick question on page 91 as well.
Is that on, Ben? Is that on?
Yep.
All right. On page 91 as well, for 2025, I was just looking at the bar graph, and it looks like maybe not all of the revenues are in for 2025 yet, is why they're not.
Correct. So for example, transient lodging tax, for example, comes in on a monthly basis, I believe, maybe quarterly. Those different revenues come in at different times. The tax revenue is received closer to November, December, although we do reserve a certain amount that may come in late, that may be delinquent or through the Board of Property Tax Appeals. So at the time of printing, I think it reflects exactly that. All right. So if you will jump over to page 97, we will go through the city council's budget. And again, please ask us any questions that you may have. We're not going to go through each of these budgets kind of line by line. Instead, we will note and really focus in on some of the major changes or projects of note. If a particular expense has gone up or down significantly, we'll really focus on those. We don't want to miss anything though, so please ask us questions. In the city council budget, I think, in my opinion, most of the attention is going to be on the contractual services line item here. The other items have stayed pretty steady. We have continued to budget resources for labor negotiations. Auditing services do get increasingly more expensive, but pretty standard. Looking at the contractual services line item for the city council's budget, that's really informed in two different ways. The first is the changes to the transient lodging tax that I mentioned a moment ago, as well as, and what you have the handout for. So you'll see we receive all those funds in the Tourism Promotion Fund, transfer some over to the general fund, and many of those items, or all of those items, I should say, listed on the right-hand side of your handout are budgeted for in this city council budget. In both the Tourism Promotion Fund and the General Fund allocation, you will see a certain amount reserved. You'll see miscellaneous on the right side and miscellaneous on the right side. That is to give us a little bit of play with transient lodging tax coming in. The Tourism Promotion Fund is a brand new fund. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room in there. There's no beginning fund balance. There's no ending fund balance. And so we want to be very mindful how we cash flow these funds as they come in throughout the year, as I mentioned a moment ago. And so with some of those funds allocated to city council, we went through a process, our local agency and nonprofit application portal, which closed at the end of January. That's the process that the city currently uses to solicit requests from different agencies and nonprofits for consideration in this budget process. Included in your packet is a summary of those requests and which ones were recommended for funding and which ones were not. Again, one of the focus here, especially in the city council's budget, is that these are general fund dollars. They are not transient lodging tax dollars. The transient lodging tax dollars are in the tourism fund. Once they are transferred over, they're a general fund dollar. And so the majority of these were not focused on as exclusively through the lens of tourism, but through how they align with the city council's goals and objectives and the city's mission. And so this process that we have for applications has evolved over the last few years. It still needs continued improvement. We need a better review process, in my opinion, more specific criteria to better review the applications we receive and to better inform applicants on how and what to apply for. And so it's something to continually improve and try and get better at here. And what we have here in the city council's budget is the recommendation that I gave. And again, included in your packet out on the dais here is a summary of which applications received a recommendation for funding and which did not, and a very brief rationale. Again, this is something that I reviewed and put together, but it's the budget committee's full prerogative to review and ask questions and make any changes that you'd like. And so with that, I'll just kind of walk through this particular line item. We're looking at $25,000 for continued partnership with the Dalles Main Street program as one of the strategies the city uses for economic revitalization and downtown support. We have $40,000 for a county agreement or IFA. This is something that the city council approved not too long ago to assist with county water expenses at Kramer Field. We have a Wasco County Kramer Field facilities application. This is, and this recommended budget is for $19,440. This is to support new fencing at Kramer Field and help it host local games and regional tournaments. We have another request from the Dalles Main Street to support mural restoration effort, specifically I believe it's the Umatilla mural, just on the corner of 2nd and Union. We have Northern Wasco County Parks and Rec IFA, again, similar to Wasco County's IFA. This is just to support water needs at park facilities throughout the community here. We also had a request for funding support in the amount, it was the amount of $335,000, and you'll see that on page 2 of my summary here. My apologies, there's a couple errors in this summary I wanted to point out. And so Northern Wasco County Parks and Rec requested $335,000 to continue to acquire, develop, and maintain tourism-related facilities in the district and the city of the Dalles. Because the city council authorized and entered into that the IFA for water services, the request was reduced by $152,000, which is the amount in the IFA. I further reduced it by $40,000, acknowledging the shift in maintenance needs and water needs from Kramer Field from Parks and Rec to Wasco County, bringing the recommended funding amount to $143,000, which is what's included in this budget. One of the things I wanted to note here is some evolving definitions or interpretation of what is a tourism-related facility, and acknowledge that the transient lodging tax ordinance changes authorized by council this year represent a pretty significant shift in how we've supported Parks and Rec. I want to continue to do that, want to support that partner through this transition. But again, looking at these applications from a general fund perspective, and that the projects and scope of work and deliverables or sources related with that request need to really focus on that and need to be stronger and more detailed in the next funding cycle. Parks in general, from staff's interpretation and opinion, are not blanket tourism-related facilities. There may be tourism-related elements to those facilities or events that are held there. But this is something that the League of Oregon Cities has been advocating for many years and is going through the process right now to bring more flexibility to those transient lodging tax dollars. And so I think with a better, more robust process and better criteria for our application portal and continued effort on the part of those who apply, we'll get more detailed and clear applications.
I've got a quick question about that. The reduction of $40,000 that you guys suggested Wasco County cover, do we know if that's already been agreed upon for them to cover it, or is that kind of up in the air?
So that's reflecting a decision that was made prior.
Okay.
So Wasco County now directly owns and maintains Kramer Field, and we entered into an IFA with them for $40,000 to support water services there. And so that's reflecting that shift over.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. The next item we have here is Columbia Gorge Humane Society. This is a second-year pilot project for their spay and neuter program. They did request about $56,000 and change. I just put it in as a flat 50. They will be taking an administrative fee to manage and run that project, which I think is good and part of that partnership and reflects the work associated with it. We have $50,000 again for Link Public Transit, which is something we've done in many years prior. This $50,000 is a substantial part of the match requirement MCED needs to leverage other grants. We have $20,000 for the beautification committee, $15,000 for a contract we have with the Dalles Art Center to facilitate various art projects throughout our community. That's the work and facilitation of those projects. And then to support some of that, we have some matching funds, $26,750, which we budgeted last year for a project that's still in the works, and that's some new art installation at the roundabout to replace the faded murals that we have here. So that's something that's been in the works for a while and want to continue with that effort. We have $25,000 budgeted for Youth Think, $6,000 budgeted for the Discovery Center, and to support some of the digital photo archives that we have out there. They've had some difficulty maintaining that access to the public. City staff actually use those photos and that resource quite a bit. And so want to see that brought back as best as possible. And then again, the last item here you'll see is miscellaneous, $67,798. That's kind of our reserve in case transient lodging tax or the general fund receives lower revenues than anticipated and help us with some of that cash flow. And so with that, I'll pause there. This is the city council budget, and a lot of that focus is on the contractual line item that I mentioned. I do know that there are representatives in the audience here tonight who represent some of these entities. And so if the council or the budget committee have any questions, now would be a great time.
Mayor Mays.
Matthew, could you talk generally about how you define deliverables and which of these contributions to the various entities enter into what might be expected in the way of deliverables? And
yeah, so one of the and it's a very good question, and I think really touches upon the process that we have here. And so one of the things we first looked at when looking at the different applications we received, again, is it a tourism a use that meets some of those state requirements, or is it that general fund use? And that's how we kind of first looked at the applications we received. The second one is really looking at any requests that were for operational or long-term recurring costs like rent or directly to staffing or things of that nature, and really kind of eliminated those. If they were a new request or a new program, because there's only so many initiatives that we have here, really kind of looked at it through that different way. When we're looking at how our funds can leverage other grant dollars to support a program and to support something that the city has in prior years and continue to build on that prior investment was another lens that we looked at. We, from some of these, will receive a presentation at the city council meeting, or I'll get a report on ridership with the Link bus, for example, number of students engaged, number of youth engaged. And so some of these have a good track record of what they've done in years prior, and continuing that investment and continuing that work. Those are some of the ways that we looked at the different grant applications.
Question. Go ahead.
Just a quick follow-up. I'm just looking at Main Street here, and the only reason I'm singling them out is because they're first on the list. But before they get to 25,000, they would have to give you a list of things that they've either accomplished or intend to.
Oh, certainly, yeah. And Main Street's a good example. Similar to the beautification committee, both Main Street and the beautification committee submit kind of a strategic plan that show the different objectives and strategies that they have for the next year. So the beautification committee, and maybe someone can speak to the beautification committee, but they have a couple different focus areas with what they want to accomplish in the next year and the strategy that they will employ to reach that. Maybe it's Stop the Drop or the beautification awards or whatever that may be. For Main Street, I think that structure really focuses on their 4-point approach that they use. So you have promotion, design, economic vitality, and organization. The strategies associated with that, for example, you have the promotion committee and First Fridays. That could be part of that deliverable and the structure that we receive to know what's associated with their grant request.
Serena.
First, I want to say thank you for addressing this part of the budget. That's something that has developed, and I appreciate that you're treating these more like grants and asking for final reports and stats and things like that. The question I have for you is on the ones that were not funded, it says, for example, Little Music City, their request should be addressed through grants or programs with the tourism services contractor. What is this tourism services contractor to whom they should address their requests?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so in this summary for the programs that were not recommended for funding, where possible, I tried to provide some kind of suggestion to receive assistance, not just say no. And so two that I'd like to highlight, so thank you for your question, is, and it's kind of a spoiler alert, I guess, but we have a request for proposals out right now for our tourism promotion services contract. That contract is currently held by the Dalles Area Chamber of Commerce. And so they receive under that contract That contract is for about $460,000 a year. And that's used to promote and advertise the community. And so rather than a direct funding request to the city council or the city itself for advertising or promotion assistance, I would like to see them go to that contractor and that source of funds first. A similar example would be the Girl Scout house, who was requesting assistance for their house and the remediation of some hazardous materials. The city has a brownfield program, which may be the ideal source for them to go to first, then a general ask to the general fund and the city council budget.
Anyone else? Fort Dalles Museum, I don't see it on the list. Are they under our umbrella?
Fort Dalles Museum is under our umbrella in partnership with Wasco County, and that'll be on the Tourism Promotions Fund. If you would like, I'd refer you back to the handout. And this is a quick, just nice little summary so you don't have to flip back and forth on the budget book. But on the left-hand side there, you will see what has been recommended for funding strictly from a tourism standpoint. So the Fort Dalles Museum is really seen as a tourism facility. It's patroned by locals, most assuredly, but we see far more cruise ship passengers and other people from out of town visiting that museum. A tourist is someone who comes from 50 miles or more away. So on that left-hand side of the sheet I'm referring to, you'll see Fort Dalles Museum, Fort Dalles Displays, which is the fireworks show that we have here, a tourism promotion contract that I just referenced a moment ago, an AutoCast app, which supports a walking trail that the city has in our downtown area, host compliance software, which is related to short-term rental management, tourism opportunity projects. I meant to highlight this a moment ago. That's the equivalent of the miscellaneous in the general fund to help with some of that cash flow. And if transient lodging tax dollars don't come in as expected, it gives us a little bit of a buffer. We have Sister City Cultural Exchange, the cruise ship dock, which is used exclusively by cruise ships bringing tourists to our facility. And then we have another item here, 200,000. This is something that's in development, so it's kind of mixed. But first and foremost, there's the potential to use this money for the Columbia Gorge regional bike hub associated with the state trail going through the gorge as one of the components to the plaza. We've also been having some discussions with the Discovery Center and the Fort Dalles Museum to see if there's a partnership that could come through there to strengthen both of those organizations. Those conversations are still ongoing, but depending on how they go, that 200,000 may be used in one way or the other, or neither, and we'll build this fund accordingly. So again, we can get more into the Tourism Promotion Fund when we get to that section of the budget, but it's closely related to this topic too. So I'm happy to continue to answer questions about it.
Later. Good. Other questions?
Question or two.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. I lost the thread somewhere. We've had what we have not really called a grant making program, but what has been a grant making program for a number of years. And this doubles the budget from last year. Tell me again how you came at this and why we're doubling the budget for our grants. I can see that our parks is a significant chunk of that. So that may be shuffling funds around from the way we used to support them, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
Or a lot of increase anyway.
Yes, most assuredly. And so there's a couple ways to answer that. You know, having a defined amount for that grant process can be helpful in a couple different ways. You know, there's a defined pot of money. People can adjust or customize what they're asking for based on that information, but we've never really had that. And that's something for us to discuss moving forward. I think one of the reasons for this increase, if you will, is the shift in how we've applied these monies. And so rather than, a certain portion of the transient lodging tax right out of the gate going straight to Parks and Rec and not showing here, it now shows it's been shifted over to this side of the budget. So even though this is an increase for the city council, for the city fund as a whole, it balances out. We've shifted that revenue over here, which now shows its expense. We've shifted other city expenses over into the tourism fund. So for example, the host compliance software used to live in the finance department that is now shifted over there. And so that's some of the context into why there's been a jump in these numbers. But looking at what the total amount is we get for TLT and then how we've split it out, it balances out.
Well, thank you very much. My other question about this is, what's miscellaneous
In the general fund,
in the allocations under city council?
and
Or-
and miscellaneous is miscellaneous. And basically what we could retitle that, frankly, if there was interest to. Miscellaneous is really just reserving a certain amount of funds in case the transient lodging tax revenue we expect to get is much lower. And so what may happen is, again, all the transient lodging tax is reserved in the tourism promotion fund, and then 44.6% of it is transferred over. And so if we get 1.46 million in transient lodging tax, we'll transfer over $649,000. But if that revenue is lower, we're only going to transfer over, again, 44.6. And so the amount we transfer over is lower. And so it's a little bit of cushion because contingency would be another word that would be close. So that if those revenues aren't what we expect, we can still hopefully abide by some of the funding agreements that we've authorized. Some of the language that we have in those and the agreements that we have is, subject to budget availability and whatnot. But we didn't want to make things too tight, especially the first year that we have this tourism promotion fund.
Thank you very much.
I might have a follow-up to Mr. Richardson's comment on that. It might be prudent to rename that fund from MISC to reserve or something related to that, just so there's a little bit more transparency for anyone looking at this and who doesn't have a Matthew available to explain it to him.
Yeah, and I will certainly make note of that. I want to be very mindful of the word that we use, because contingency and reserve and whatnot have dynamics around them. But I'll make note of that. We'll come up with something maybe a bit more descriptive. Like I said a moment ago, on the tourism side, we said tourism opportunity projects, maybe something like that.
Thank you.
Now, one of the things I wanted to make note here is that we do have a parking lot. And so Nick is here to help us out there. One of the things we did last year is that if there was a budget committee member who wanted to flag something for later discussion, you wanted to see something, some kind of adjustment, or to come back for more discussion, you can certainly flag that for us and we can add it to the parking lot. It's just the first department that we're looking at, so we still have a lot to get through. But if there's something that is included in the budget that you don't want to see, or something not included in the budget that you do want to see, and you want to flag it for conversation later or discussion later, that's certainly one tool that you have available to you. Any other questions?
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's move ahead.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the city clerk.
Good evening. My name is Amy L., and my title is City Clerk / Public Information Officer. And my budget is on page 100 for your budget book. And before I get into the budget piece, I would just like to point out, looking at my city clerk goals for this coming fiscal year, I want to bring to your attention that the City Council created during our goal setting this year a new goal number 6. If you want to look at goal number 6 action items in more detail, those are on page 26 of your book. But goal 6 is public relations. It says it is to promote an accurate and inclusive community narrative to inspire greater engagement and foster a strong sense of community pride among residents. And the reason I bring this up is because, being public information officer, this goal in particular may be some of the reasons why there are some changes in my budget. So to help with those things as as I'm going through here, I will describe that. So again, my budget begins on page 102. And I am just going to talk about the things that are probably the biggest changes in my little budget here. Contractual services, as the city manager mentioned earlier, you'll probably hear it from several of us in the next couple of evenings, but most of my contractual services were moved to the IT department's budget because they were technology related. And so there is a drop there. However, there is also an addition of a $6,600 item, which is the branding services. And that is goal action 6.6 is to do a branding project for the city. The intention here is to help build public trust when we have a nice, clear brand, to make sure that we're recognizable and to present ourselves well. So that is kind of almost balances out that contractual services piece a bit. The other sections I would like to highlight is actually combining travel, food, lodging, and the training and conferences sections, the reasons of those changes, those increases. If you look at previous years, fiscal years 2022, 23 and 23, 24, they were a bit lower. This is because I am new in this position, and the person there before me knew she was on her way out and retiring and had slowed down the training and education, and so was not spending as much in those pieces. I have an addition for more training for the PIO role, in particular a communications school with the National Association of Government Communicators. And I will continue to do education for the municipal clerk certification piece. And so that is impacting the travel, food, lodging, and training and conferences. And the last piece I will highlight here is my miscellaneous expenses. There was not a pre-existing line item that worked well for some of the PIO pieces that I was asking for. I have inserted here an addition of $2,500 for public education printing needs. That didn't exist anywhere in my budget before. And then another addition of $1,700 for water bill inserts because those cost a little bit more. So my total budget proposed budget for fiscal year 25-26 is $175,333. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes.
Go ahead, Cindy.
Last year I asked for an index of what all these abbreviations are. There's a nice glossary, but it doesn't have these abbreviations in it.
We still don't
I
have.
personally do not know what VEBA is, or OAMR, or PIO, or IIMC. And so I'm just requesting that again.
Okay. Would you like me to tell you very quickly?
Sure.
OAMR is the Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders. IIMC is the International Institute of Municipal Clerks. And I can't remember what the other one you asked me was.
OAM.
PIO, Public Information Officer.
Oh, okay. Anyway, it would be,
Yes, I
I think it
understand.
would be really helpful to have some, and you're not that's not the only one where.
Right. We're limited in the amount of space that we can put
Yeah,
things on
and
these
it's-
lines. So I think
It's really tiny.
we divert to acronyms. Any others?
Just a comment. From a public relations background many years ago, I'm just glad to see more money being put towards ongoing training and hours in public relations work, which translates to transparency within the city. So it's much appreciated. Thank you.
And just commending you for seeming to keep the budget flat, even with growing expenses. That's not easy to do. So.
Thanks.
There comments, questions Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on.
So moving on to the city manager's budget, I'll ask you to turn to page 106. There's two items I'd like to highlight in this budget. The first is under travel, food, and lodging. So I was appointed to the Oregon City County Managers Association as a board member late last year. And so anticipate a little bit more travel, a little bit more expense associated with service on that OCCMA board. And so that's the increase you see on travel, food, and lodging to 8,200. And the other item here is near the tail end on page 107 under miscellaneous expenses. There's 20,000 budgeted there. This is something new, a little bit of an increase, as you may see. And this is really intended to give the city manager and myself a little bit of flexibility if there are minor expenses or other opportunities throughout the course of the year that we would otherwise miss due to timing or the opportunity itself. A certain discount or a special deal with procurement or a local agency partnership opportunity, a health and wellness opportunity for staff. As noted a moment ago, we do try and keep a pretty tight and lean budget, and having some funds allocated with the city manager discretion and the spending authority that I have can be helpful, especially under something that's a tight timeline. We don't have time to get to city council for approval or whatnot. I wanted to allocate that here. And those are the two highlights I wanted to make for my budget. Any questions?
Go ahead, Mayor Mays.
Any acronyms that anybody?
I intentionally said Oregon City County Managers Association. ICMA is the International City Managers Association.
I just have one question, and it might be just a budgeting question. For that miscellaneous fund, the 20,000, if opportunities don't come up to utilize that or anything that you think is worth to use, does this just go into next year's budget, or what happens with those funds over?
It would become part of the ending fund balance that we have for a particular fiscal year and be budgeted as part of that beginning fund balance for the next.
Perfect.
Good question.
Okay, if there aren't any questions there, I will ask our city attorney, Jonathan, to come on up.
Good evening, Chair and Honorable Committee. VEBA stands for Voluntary Employee Beneficiary Association, and it's the city's contribution to some healthcare benefits for its employees. I just have to start with that. My name is Jonathan. I'm the city's attorney. I'm responsible for the legal department. It's a modestly sized department, I think of 2 full-time employees. My budget last year to this year has gone up 1.22%. I think I tried my best to keep costs down as well. I think I might have maybe one of the simplest budgets in this book. And I tried to lay everything out as thoughtfully as I could. I'm happy to answer any particular questions. If anybody has any.
I have a question, but it's not so much directed at you as much as Matthew, because I noticed a pattern in the budget. I noticed the cell phone allowance and the telephone has dropped in a lot of the budgets, and just wanted to see what you guys did to accomplish that.
So I believe that the city manager is about to tell you that the costs for cell phones stays in each department for those users that have that allowance, but the other costs, so looking at my budget, for example, last year was $2,120. Now it's down to $720. Those costs have been shifted to the information technology department.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew.
You bet.
Other questions? I was thinking you were using 2 cups with a string and you communicate from the legal to the.
Not this year. Hearing none, thank you all very much.
All right, the next section we have is finance, utility, and judicial, starting on page 116. And I don't know if Angie is up for it. Sure she is.
Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, good evening. So I'm just going to go ahead and review the judicial budget for you. The judicial budget is consists of the judge and a half FTE that is shared with the utility department, which makes the one FTE. So that does keep the personnel services down. The contractual services is one item that I like to just kind of bring up is we do have the Western Collection Agency that we budget on an annual basis to be able to send overdue payments to collection agency to try to recoup some of that money, which we are pretty successful every year. One thing that I was noticing when I was going through this evening is there is a contractual services for additional court costs for $20,000. I am not seeing a need in the budget for that any longer. I don't think there's going to be. So I think that that is something that we can just propose to fix, remove it from the budget, and add that to the ending fund balance or another need if you guys feel that you need. And we have the court appointed attorney fees. This is a low amount. We do have a few leftover court cases from past fiscal years that might need that additional services. But typically, if you can see in the past, we do not spend very much money on it. So just a reminder, you can look over to the left hand of the page and you can actually see what the actual costs were for 22-23 and the actual costs were for the 23-24 year. And so we do budget about $4,500 just to be safe. And travel, food, and lodging and the training and conferences. These are low minimal amounts that are budgeted on an annual basis for the judge to do his conferences and also for the city clerk to do, not the city clerk, but the court clerk to do a little bit of training to stay up on the organ law. And I'll go ahead and jump down to the finance. The finance department consists of 4 full-time FTEs. And I'd like to go ahead and go to the contractual services. The contractual services, we actually reduced the budget just a little bit this year, just because we were budgeting last year for $50,000. We don't really think that we'll probably reach that max this year, so we did drop it just a little bit. You know, a lot of our fees in here consist of the bank fees for interest rates. And also this would be the ClearGov annual fee. And the ClearGov annual fee is the budget book that you're currently looking at this evening. We also do the accounting and the audit advisory services. We budgeted for $27,000 this year. And I just, as we're kind of getting into the budget and you're looking at it, in the past, you know, we had the blue in the writing on the worksheets for the possible accounting assistance and the OPEB analysis, and that's not there this year. So if you look underneath it, you'll see the 12,000 and the 15,000 and the 200, which adds up to the 27,000. I'm hoping that next year you guys will have those highlighted blue again. That's been a request that was put in by ClearGov so you guys can kind of, you know, break that out and be able to see that. But the accounting and advisory services, this is something we budget for every year. It's for possible accounting assistance of $12,000 for any new GASB things that come through that we might need some actual assistance with. And then the OPEB analysis, that is a GASB rule also. That's over any 100 employees. We legally have to go out and have that contracted out. And OPEB is for the pre-employment benefits, and that's like for the health insurance stuff. So. We did the travel, food, and lodging and the training and conferences. It's very important for the finance staff to stay up on the GASB rules. And so they typically, we send 3 people to the OGFOA fall conference, and CASEL conference. We usually like to try to send 1 person to the CASEL conference. And just a reminder that the CASEL conference is the financing software that the city uses for everything. And we do try to do payroll training and Excel online classes to keep up to date on those. And if you guys don't have any questions, I'll jump down to the utility billing. The utility billing is 1.5 FTE. That's 1.5 full-time employees. And there is really no new expenses in this line item. These are just typical expenses that we use. And, we do have a reduction in the assets less than 5,000 because that's been switched over to the IT department to cover their the computer expenses if they were on a rotation for the year. So the IT department now takes care of that. And is there any questions?
Anyone? Dan.
Thank you, Angie. Briefly, this is Dan. Briefly, remind us all what GASB means.
It's a Government Accounting Standards Board. And
Thank
so
you.
this is where they actually put in all of our rules and laws of how we have to do our reporting on our finances.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if this is directed to Matthew or to ourselves, but would this be an appropriate time to propose, following up on Angie's suggestion, to trim or remove the contractual services line item on page 117?
I mean, if the budget committee doesn't have any questions and is supportive of that change, we have Lisa here who's helping us take notes as well. If it's not an item for further discussion, we'll just take note of it and adjust the budget. When we get to the end of this whole process and we're moving to, approve and recommend adoption of the budget, it'll be noted as amended, and we'll summarize all these changes before that motion is made so we can capture them all at once.
I guess my impulse would be to tighten that down, maybe not to 0, but to something very low, like 5,000, to put some additional into the court-appointed attorney fees, maybe a few thousand additional based on her suggestion, and then reduce the balance.
Go ahead, please.
I know in past years, we've gotten to the end of the process and we're like, well, we have a little bit of extra money left over from whatever. Can we write down this on the parking lot as a, well, if something comes up and we're like, well, we really want to give them $5,000 more, we know that we have this to remove from the budget, we move it around. Can we put that up on the board? It's, well, I don't know. Do you know the line?
That's a good idea.
They have a line item. It's judicial contractual services for additional court costs, $20,000.
Okay.
Moving on.
Moving on.
Yes.
Okay. So
Is Angie completed? Has she done?
any words of wisdom, Angie?
No, I don't think so. I think you're doing a great job, Matthew.
Oh, thank you very much.
I
Thank you.
feel better.
As I stumble in the next.
Please.
Would we want to put the page number on the parking lot for future reference? Perfect. No, if you got it flagged, that's perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, great. If I can ask you to turn to page 124, this is our Human Resources Department. There's one change here I'd like to note, but first I'll start off that we are recruiting for this position. This is the Assistant City Manager Human Resources position, authorized by council earlier this year. We're evolving this position a little bit. The staffer who will fill that will start next Monday. So they are missing the budget meeting here by just 1 week. But her name is Brenda, and we're really excited for her to start. The Human Resources Department will have that staffer, and also is the place where our safety officer exists. Our current safety officer is on military leave, so we have a temp officer in place, and this fund supports those positions. One of the changes that needs to happen on page 124 is in the personnel services. We need to make an adjustment and add an additional 18,536 in total compensation for that position. So that's the major change there, right at the top of page 124 for salaries, insurance, life insurance, workers' comp, all those different personnel services line items. That's the total we need broken out into each of those line items. I can provide the specifics if you'd like, but those are the resources we need for this fund. A couple of the
It's probably that number.
exactly that number. Yeah. If you want to save it, I'll spend. No, I'm just kidding. Further down on page 124, a couple of highlights. We're still maintaining $30,000 to assist with recruitment and hiring costs. We are still undergoing recruitment and hiring efforts. We also have some continued staff transitions coming up, so I want to maintain the resources that we have there. We also have an increase in employee relations from 16,200 to 32,500. This is a reflection of some additional effort we've been placing on community organizational culture, volunteer and staff appreciation, and the work of a committee that we formed called the ATF committee, which I promised myself I was going to remind me what it stands for. Because all I ever think about is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Appreciation task.
Appreciation Task Force. Thank you very much. I cannot get it straight. But we have an ATF committee that really works to organize a holiday party, mid-July employee and volunteer appreciation barbecue, and other ways to really support and show our appreciation for our employees. And so that is the only other notable highlight that I had for the ACM HR budget. Are there any questions?
Yes.
I've got one, Matthew. I just noticed on a lot of the other budgets, the medical insurance was nominally increased, but on this one, it seemed to more than double. I wasn't sure if that was a clerical error or if there's certain reasons why this budget's medical insurance got ballooned versus others.
So we will try and budget and anticipate for the medical insurance needs of an employee. And we typically budget at the higher end there in case they are coming on and have a full family that they want to have insurance coverage for. In prior years, that is much lower because the staffer who was here at the time did not have those dynamics and did not have that additional expense.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, moving on.
And if there are no other questions here, I'd like to ask our Community Development Director, Josh Chandler.
Good evening, committee members. Josh Chandler, Community Development Director. We're going to be discussing the Community Development Department, which is actually broken up into two separate divisions. There's planning and historic preservation, and then there's economic development. Department staff supports the work of City Council, Planning Commission, Historic Landmarks Commission, as well as our Urban Renewal Agency. So the agency recommended approval of the 25-26 fiscal year budget at the April 15th meeting, and we'll be adopting the budget at the May 20th meeting. So this evening, I'll just be discussing planning, historic preservation, and economic development. So the first budget is basically the community development planning historic aspect, and that is on page 127. And looking at this, there was an increase of about 9% from the previous year, and it associates really, it breaks down to about 75% of that was actually increases in salaries and benefits. There's also a large increase of $30,000 for contractual services, and there's two things here to note. One is the placement of a RARE, which is a Resource Assistance for Rural Communities member. This is a AmeriCorps program. With the help of Main Street, we pulled together a pretty great work plan for this, and we're selected for an interview with RARE to move that forward. However, right now, this is one of the many programs around the country that has been slashed or frozen at the federal level. So fingers crossed that things are able to move around and we're actually able to place a RARE and support that program, 30-year program. We've had a lot of success here in this community. I'm sitting right next to an alum of RARE. We also had a great program just this last year, which helped get the revamp to our downtown Wi-Fi system, as well as the lighting project that we had at the Getchell building. So RARE does great things. So like I said, fingers crossed that that one will be moving forward. I'm also a hearings officer. This is an impartial third-party land use attorney. Any of the city councilors, remember, we just discussed this last week, is also something discussed with our planning commission. So we're going to be exploring the implementation of a hearings officer. And you'll also see an increase in our mailings. These are broken out into two separate aspects, the mailings as well as printing. This was almost a $9,000 increase, almost $10,000. This is associated with what's called a ballot measure 56 notice, and that is something required by the state. When you are making a change to a land use code, you need to notify those who are being impacted. This number is based off of we did one citywide mailing this last year. It was $4,500. So we are expecting that we're going to have some code amendments coming up. So we increased that amount. And this is probably closer to the range. When we continue to do land use amendments, this is probably closer to the range that we'll be looking at going moving forward. And some decreases, I will note, there was some brief decreases all throughout. And there was all, as everybody has mentioned so far, the consolidation of our IT department. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Josh, what was the Measure 56 issue we had last year?
Last year we did not do a ballot measure 56, but we did a notice. So I just used the quote when we did our substantial amendment for urban renewal. So every single property owner received one then. So we used that as a pretty good threshold for us. Also, you've had some staffing challenges. You want to give us an update on how that's going? Yeah, we are fully staffed. So there's 5 FTE, myself, the director, senior planner, associate planner, planning tech, and administrative assistant. All right, no other questions. I'll jump into the economic development portion, which is on page 132. This division, the CDD receives. This division of the CDD receives support from the city manager's office, the planning division, urban renewal agency. This position, we recently had a change. Dan Spots, who was with the city for a while, actually just retired. I think it was last week. We kind of trailed on there for a little bit. We appreciate his assistance. So we have filled his seat. Our new hiring of Jake Anderson, we're excited to have him along. Overall, this budget saw a decrease. It was about a $30,000 decrease from the previous year, but I will make a slight adjustment to that. I'll mention something here. Really, this was a result of reducing contractual services. Last year, we budgeted rather high for some grant writing services that we weren't able to formalize, and believing that we can do some of that in-house. So we've kind of cut that cost quite a bit. And also some IT consolidation. And one note to make here, and it also is going to go on page 134. This has to do with the personnel services. As we were finalizing this, we hadn't hired a new EDO. So there was budgeted on the lower end. So we will need to add about 65. Let me see the number. It's about $6,500. I have the total here. 6,532 is going to go into increase for a salary and compensation for that economic development officer position. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah.
One comment I'd like to make is, the city is engaged with the community outreach team, which is a group that has historically traveled to Washington, D.C. to advocate for community projects and policies that affect us all. The community outreach team has been having a lot of discussions around their efforts and where to focus on and what has the most effect, biggest bang for our buck, you could say. And one of the things that has been of consideration was some support for that DC outreach with a government affairs specialist or some kind of resource in DC that could assist us in that area. However, a lot of the conversation that really landed was more focus on Salem here in Oregon and sending representatives ourselves to that community, to the Capitol, to advocate and really meet and grow our relationships with our own legislators. And so that's something, that shift in focus of the COT was part of this process as well.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, and next up, if I may, is our police chief for the police department. Supported by Captain Carrico as well.
Good evening, committee. I'm Tom Worthy. I'm the Chief of Police for City of Dalles, and I recognize most of the faces here before, and I will endeavor to keep this understandable. So if I say an acronym, just raise your hand and I'll say what it is, because there's a lot in this line of work. So first of all, I think I'd like to begin just in a overall statement by saying this is a $6.64 million budget for the City of the Dalles. For that, you get 26 sworn police officers, all in, from myself down to our newest officer. And this budget was constructed in a fair, thoughtful, and responsible manner. It was definitely teamwork to get it done, because there's a lot of moving pieces and parts in this. This is going to take me longer to get through than some of the other things that we've talked about so far tonight. It was a collaborative effort, and this is a general fund budget. So everything that we get here is straight out of the general fund. To begin with, just a little background. For your $6.64 million in the police department, in the last calendar year, we attended to 18,455 calls for service within the city. And in doing so, just to highlight the importance of our training, we only had to use force 32 times. 32 times. That's incredibly low. And that's a high call number for a city of our size, and any city would be proud of that. And so that's why I'm highlighting that here today. We are an accredited agency through the Northwest Accreditation Alliance, which shows that we do aspire to the highest levels of professionalism within the business, and we intend to maintain that, and that'll pop up when we get to the budget. So to begin with, I think let's talk about some of the big items. Our budget is well over 50% personnel and benefits, but some of the things that we want to buy on page 72, if you will.
We don't have a page 72.
72?
72?
Is it 172?
It's 140, 42,
That's on
43.
72. I just printed it.
Page 72 has the bar graph.
Well, this is my page 72.
Ask a question right away while they're finding page
Yes,
72.
ma'am.
Oh,
Drone as a first responder. How is a drone a first responder?
We'll talk about that in
Okay.
detail.
Thanks.
Got page 72.
Yeah, perfect. We're back in CIP. My apologies.
Sorry, page 72. For some of the things, and this is our larger purchase plan. Most notably and importantly is our police fleet. As you know, police officers spend the majority of their time, or a large part of their time, in their patrol cars out in the community, and it is their office that they work in. So maintaining a well, first of all, a functioning, and second of all, a comfortable and professional fleet for our officers is very important for the community. We do plan to buy 2 marked patrol cars and 1 unmarked vehicle in the upcoming budget. That's on our life cycle replacement plan. We generally order a car around 80,000 miles, and it comes in somewhere around 100 or 110,000 miles, depending on how long it takes us to get that vehicle. And we're going to collaborate with the city maintenance department and let them upgrade to a different truck and purchase one off of them to use as an unmarked vehicle, a detective vehicle that we will use around town. So they help us, we're helping them. We do have the taser replacement project for $135,190 listed here in this year. This has been on the 5-year plan for multiple cycles since I've been here. I just achieved my 4th year anniversary here at the police department, and this has been on the radar ever since. Tasers, like everything else, wear out over time, and they do get better over time as well, and they're continually under development. They're only a number of years old to begin with, and so they're getting better and better and better. So $135,000 will purchase us 26 tasers plus the equipment, training, warranties, everything we need to get that project done. And there is a time delay on getting those as well too. So we're going to drop a purchase order if possible, as soon as possible.
Quick question, what do we
Yes, sir.
do with your obsolete tasers?
They're of no value. So we'll have them just disposed out through the normal process. Drone as a first responder. Question was there. That's not out until 28. We'll come back and talk about that a little bit later, unless you want to cover that now. We're going to talk about drones. Virtual reality training range is also out in the future in 28. If we can get to there, there's a little bit of that included in our taser purchase too. Some of their training approaches for that is through VR or virtual reality. And so we'll see how we adopt that before we go and purchase any kind of a new platform for that. Interview room camera, again, that's out in the distance. We have specialized cameras in our interview rooms. And in the last couple of weeks, we've had multiple sex offenders, a homicide suspect, and a stabbing suspect in that interview room. It needs to work, and it needs to work every time. So we're happy to have it. There is one pencil correction here for the upcoming budget of 2026. UAV, or the unmanned aerial vehicle, for 20,000. We'll move that down into the future and or seek and try and achieve a grant for that. And we do have a budget line item for incoming grants if we can be successful.
So you're wanting to take that out?
Yeah, that's right. The 20,000.
So
Is that something else?
that's something to go on the board over here then?
I would say no, Lisa's assisting us with a running list. We'll have that summary at the end of it.
Okay.
I think the board is a good,
The parking lot is a great place to reserve for discussion the things that
Okay.
views may differ on, or are resources that could be used in a different way.
I think we were all just kind of adding up that we're already over that first 20,000.
You haven't seen anything yet. So here we go. Much more to come. So now turning your attention to page 137, the police department budget.
Before we leave, let me see, the virtual augmented reality range, is that the projector with the screen that?
It's way past that now. It's goggles and integrated other equipment, computers, analytics. It's way past the screen now.
So that does officer training to keep their
Right.
skills up.
Yes, sir.
I really highly recommend any new virtual things that we can do.
Yeah, I think if you look at the budget that we're proposing and the things that are on our strategic roadmap, we're trying to be forward leaning and be on that leading edge of training and innovation. Drone as a first responder is another good example of that. That's a very much growing trend in law enforcement, where departments are able to actually clear calls without actually sending an officer out there. For example, a disorderly person in the street or a minor traffic crash that we can reach in seconds with a drone. It's probably, you'll never even know it was there because they're quiet and they're high. And so we can, and the cameras zoom well. So a drone as a first responder program is a whole program. It's not just flying a drone. We do that already. It generally involves a base station on the roof of the police department so we can launch immediately when a call comes in. And this town is really perfect for it because we could cover the whole town with one drone from the PD whenever there's staff there to fly it. And the captain knows a whole lot more about drones than I do. In fact, he's a Part 117 drone pilot as well. The 117? Is that it? Yeah.
I just have one comment on the virtual reality program, and won't affect the budget, but maybe have some anti-nausea medication, because some older individuals or people that aren't familiar with that, can be a side effect. So
Yeah, and I don't want you to think that it's like playing video games or that VR training is in any way a game. It's not. In fact, I'd say most of the scenarios that you would go through in that end in de-escalation, end in verbal training and tactics to calm people down, ramp down situations, and they don't always end up in a big gunfight. In fact, most often they don't. We did demo one of these systems at the police department for free. A vendor came out and set it all up for us, And as a rat ran at one of our officers, they actually jumped. It's that real. So we didn't see any rat in the room, but it was truly in the computer.
yeah.
So back to police department budget on page 137. You can see our staffing and our department structure there. We've got our own organizational chart on the front. I recognize it's a little blurry, but of course we're a 24/7, 365 operation. We never don't work at the police department. We always have people on, and we do accomplish that with just 6 sergeants and 18 police officers. We have a handful of support staff that help us accomplish our mission. In regards to evidence and dog catching and codes enforcement, they have their own budgets, but they're aligned with the police department. And we'll talk about codes and animal enforcement or control as a separate budget. So you can read the narratives here. I want to get to the money. If anybody sees anything in there or have noted anything that you want to bring up, I'm happy to answer any questions. So I'll pause for questions. One program, enforcement program that's currently inactive is our participation in the MINT team, or the Mid-Columbia Interagency Narcotics Team. That's fallen by the wayside due to staffing, not just with ourselves, but with our partner agencies, primarily Wasco County Sheriff's Department, Hood River County, and Hood River City, as well as state police. At one time, we're aligned with the MINT program, or the MINT team, I should say. And that's going to take some spooling back up. There is an effort to get there. Currently underway, which is Wasco County and Hood River County partnering. And when we're in a position to participate, we will. But our first priority here has to be having red and blue lights pull up in front of emergencies. That's what people expect of us. And so we'll staff that first. Also, our police reserve program is currently inactive. At one time, the city of Dalles had a pretty robust police reserve program. Currently inactive, and we're not asking to fund that in this budget. So that's an important change for us. We can't find people to do the job for money. We can't find people to do it for free. And so we're going to set that aside, stick a pin in it until such time as we're stable staffed and ready to take on that extra training burden.
Chief, could you, regarding the MINT team, so you mentioned everybody's having staffing issues with that. Then I thought I heard you allude to the fact that you might get it back up.
So that's why it went away originally, is staffing fell for all of the aligned
years ago.
agencies. It's been years. Yeah, it's been years. And drug enforcement, narcotics task force is not something that you can stick your toe in the water. It's something that has to be done very carefully, and it has to have a high degree of oversight and professionalism and training around it, because it's a way that you can get into trouble really, really fast. Plainclothes officers, money, drugs, surveillance, informants, there's all kinds of opportunities for danger there. And so if we want to do that again, we need to do it correctly. And I think if we let Wasco County and Hood River County lead the way on that, and then as we build in our competencies for that kind of work, we can join in when the time is right for us. Sure. Top of page 139, I do have where it says a goal was to staff the traffic, MINT, and other specialty assignments. And then I do have a business liaison officer. Some of you might not have been familiar with that term. One of our main constituencies at the police department is our business community, downtown in the core, as well as out by Jack's Mini Market, and then the bigger box retail stores, including Home Depot, are a constant source of calls for service for us. And I would like to staff that with what used to be the NEAT officer, or Neighborhood Enforcement Action Team officer, was primarily an officer that dealt with the homeless population. We all do that now every single day, myself included. And so if we could have a specialty position that dealt with our business community to help combat internal theft, shoplifting, persons who've been trespassed, graffiti, other issues surrounding businesses, I think there's a strong call for that in the community. I've spoken with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're very supportive. And when the time's right, we'd like to staff that as well. So that's on the roadmap as well. We're not there yet due to our lack of tenure in the department and our skills building and coaching for our new officers but that's on the roadmap as well. So if you haven't seen that before, ELO, Business Liaison Officer. Page 140, if you look at the pie chart that was provided, you can see that over half of our budget is salaries and insurance. And that's really things that are not within my control to manipulate or move around at all. That's the cost of doing business. So we're primarily a people business, and all of our equipment is to support the operations of those individuals. So then when you get to page 141, we actually get to the expenditures. And you'll notice in regular salaries, there is an increase from 2.7 million to 3.017 million. And I think that the city managers mentioned that the 3-year contract cycle was recently ratified, and that'll be reflective of those pay raises that were negotiated with the city. Thank you. He nodded, so I'm right. I also take a note on the third line on page 141. Our overtime budget has been raised from 152,000 to 190,000. We're continuously in this cycle of running behind on overtime. Overtime is extremely difficult to control in public safety. There's things that we have to do. And when our officers work, they get paid. And that's just non-negotiable. So things like calls at the end of the shift, court, training, other requirements of the job. And so we want to add some to still what is a very reasonable overtime budget, so we can not have this pressure at the end of the year. As a matter of fact, on Saturday night, we had just 2 officers working in the whole city. And I don't find that to be great. I didn't like it, but I did it because we're in that crunch right now. So we're trying to avoid that. DUI overtime salaries, the next line down, I just take note that that's money that we expect to get from the Oregon Traffic Safety Division at ODOT, where they pay us extra money to go out and do DUI enforcement, speed enforcement, seatbelt enforcement, and cell phone enforcement. So we lump it all again as DUI enforcement for $15,000. Sandy, we got DUI okay? Okay, good. So I'm going to skip ahead to things that caught my attention. I think I need to bring to your attention, but please stop me if I go past anything of interest. So we're on page 142 now, and I have highlighted the OACP department review. I want to explain what that is. When I first got here, we went through the accreditation process, which was a long tear down of every policy, every procedure, every training event that we had to make sure that we were operating as highly as possible. We succeeded in that. We continue to be accredited. And we went straight from that to the CIS best practices review. CIS is our insurance company. And they came in and did a lot of the same stuff with an eye towards risk management. And so that was the second leg of the 3-legged stool that I'd like to build around outside review of the department. And OACP department review through the Oregon Association of Chiefs of Police will send other aligned police chiefs of similar sized agencies to our community for basically just the cost of expenses to come out and review our department operations and see if there's any blind spots that I have or the captain has or the city has as a whole. And with those 3 things together, then I'll finally start feeling like we've been properly reviewed and vetted and that we're doing things the best way we possibly can. It's a very nominal charge. Wasco County communications. So now let's talk some real big numbers. We receive our communications services from Wasco County. When we call on the radio, it's a county dispatcher that answers. And so we pay for that service by our use of the service. And the use is measured through the amount of calls for service that come in and get entered into our CAD system. So take note, CAD, computer-aided dispatch. We're going to talk about that as well. But just for answering, I have to refer to other sheets here because this gets complicated. Just for answering the radios, being there to run driver's license checks and check people for wants and check items for stolen, we're going to pay $428,000 this year, and that is an increase. There has been a reduction in the collection of 911 universal service fees, which is paid to the county to support emergency communications. So our share went up proportionally. Additionally, the dispatch center was running with one supervisor and 7 or 8, maybe up to 9 dispatchers on the line. And so that dispatch supervisor needed some relief, especially since we're going into our CAD RMS, records management system project with the county. And they'll need to have somebody else there helping them implement that system and supporting the day-to-day operations. So rather than hiring a whole new FTE in our meeting with them, our annual meeting pertaining to the dispatch services agreement, they agreed to elevate one employee, keep them on the floor, which is where a floor supervisor should be, and pay them as a supervisor or a lead worker to provide some relief for that dispatch director. And by way of comparison, Hood River has 2 floor supervisors and a director, and they were running with none and a director. So it was a good sensical addition for us. So where you see below Wasco County Communications, EIS, any place where you see EIS, that is our existing systems. And those systems are going to need to stay in place for at least a year as we stand up a new system for computer-aided dispatch and records management system that we're doing collaboratively with the county. This has been on the radar for over 4 years since I got here as a strategic priority of mine to increase and modernize our technology. We're running on very, very antiquated and dated technology. As like the city councilors know, I've spoken to them about it. But we are far behind the curve in that, and there has been a ton of innovation in the space in the last 10 years or so, especially with the rise of cloud computing and software as a service. So we went with the county to let a RFP or a request for proposal to the industry and ask them, hey, with all of these requirements that we listed out here in detail, who can meet our needs? We had 4 people that attended the pre-bidding conference and then 3 that actually bid. The 3 bidders, we brought them all in for demonstrations locally. They sent out their sales team and showed us what they could do, and we selected a proposed winning vendor. And fortunately, it was the lowest cost vendor. When does that ever happen, right? And so we're happy about that. And so the way that this project is split out, bear with me as I try and keep my head straight on it. The CAD project, the CAD portion, the computer-aided dispatch, command and control for officers in the field, is $473,840, but we pay by usage for that system. In our last cycle, we used it 62.7% of the total. So most of it was us. So there's 3 people, I haven't mentioned the fire department either. They're a partner in this as well. So city, county, and talking in my ear.
Fire.
And fire. And so our piece projected cost for the CAD portion of this project is $297,098. For the records management system, it's not used by fire. Therefore, they're not going to contribute to that. We're not going to do it by FTE between the sheriff's department and us. They agreed to split that 50-50. Benefits us. We have more FTE. And so the RMS portion is $212,855. Our split, $106,442. In order to do the project, we can't just turn off our existing system and go forward because we've got really important stuff in there. This police record data, murders, rapes, everything that we might need to find a suspect or any operation that we've had in the past or a report that we wrote. And the county has agreed to do our data conversion efforts for that. And they have made an estimate for time and materials that would cost $13,340 to bring our information forward in a basic manner, not field-to-field mapping, but by PDFing all of our cases, bringing them over as a searchable document and presenting them there for us. So if we need to go back and dig through and sort through that stuff, we can do it as a sort of a pseudo manual process. $13,340. Now I've talked about the software, but I haven't talked about where we're going to put it. So the vendor made a proposal for us that they could host this for us, host meaning provide the location for us to run this software in the cloud. And in public safety software, you don't just need one instance, you need two. Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question going back to the CAD versus the EIS. After you do phase out the EIS through that project and get everything migrated, is that going to free up a lot more of the budget and cost here? Once
It will free up the budget that was accounted through EIS. However, as we've had that for a really long time, that company is like, for instance, the stop data portal, our required statistical transparency of policing for traffic stops, how we report who we stopped, is only $750 through them. And so in a modern system, that's going to be exponentially higher. So yes, there will be that offset or savings, but it's not going to be very much, right? So this is a lot of green run, new expense in this project.
You're doing an upgrade to your technology to get yourself modernized. It usually isn't cheap.
It's not cheap, and the offset is always disappointing. So speaking about software and where we're going to put it, the vendor proposed some solutions for that, which were very expensive. And again, the county wrote in with a proposal that they could rack the local instance as well as the geographically diverse backup instance for a warm backup, meaning it'll have incremental updates as we change reports and add new people and clear warrants and stuff. That'll happen a little bit at a time, and then a full backup on a scheduled basis. And they are going to set up that entire system for us, but that means acquiring network, routers. It means firewalls, servers, software to run it all on. And their estimate for us, now we're splitting this 50-50. Hold on a second. No, we're splitting that by use. So it's 125,000 is their estimate. 62.7, our latest contribution or computation, is 78,375. So with that straight up work of answering radios at 428,000, plus those numbers that I just gave you, CAD RMS plus 911 operations. Now I have two numbers in front of me. $914,558.38. So that's our big ask, and that's been on the plan for some time. And we've been working on this for 4 years and in earnest for the last year to get to here. And if we get through this process, have the money allocated, then we can start the project. So we've put in all this effort just to get here so we can start. Yes, sir.
So just to draw your attention to page 142, and as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, when we assemble these budget books and these worksheets, we take our best guess with the information we have at the time. And as this project has rolled out, we get these final numbers that the chief mentioned a moment ago. So you'll see right in the middle of the page there that this budget includes 631,768. Just wanted to emphasize that will need to be adjusted to the number that the chief gave a moment ago, which is 914,000 and change, and that will reduce our ending fund balance. That's something that we can do. Council authorized the agreements with Wasco County and Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue to access and use those services. And so that's a significant budget change there. I just want to make sure that the committee is aware of. But as the chief noted, this has been long in the works. It is not really an option, in my opinion. It's necessary.
And continuing down again on page 142, below where it says EIS and CAD RMS expense, there's a line for CAD RMS project change order for 20,000. In a project of this scope and magnitude, it is very likely that we've overlooked something through no fault of our own, but through ignorance, that we don't know what we don't know. And if the vendor says, for instance, hey, we never bid that connection, this is an opportunity for us to modify our project plan and achieve a true outcome that really meets the needs of the department. And I don't know if they will give us a project change order or not, or if they do, how much it would be. It's a sort of a fail-safe if they do. And below that is $25,000 that we're going to collaborate with the county for a company called AdCom and their professional CAD RMS implementation services providers. They help agencies like us to get this thing right. And so at every turn, I think you can see and tell that we've taken every effort to foolproof the project and give ourselves the highest chance of success, overall success, to finish on time, on budget, and on scope, meaning we get what we wanted to get at the end. And so that's very important for us. They've already been servicing our project, very, very helpful professionals, and they know all of the lingo and in CAD RMS and how to get this thing done correctly. So we're going forward on a very risky project with our due diligence in mind, and we're going to work as hard as we can to get this project just right. Yes, sir.
One more question.
Mhm.
Maybe more, no promises. For the project currently as it stands, do we have a project plan that you could share with any of us members right now, or do they have a project plan that they're still working on?
We haven't signed a contract yet. So contract first, but scope of work with that, and then baseline the project. So that is on the cusp, but we'd really like to know we have money to do the project before we commit the money. So that's what we're working forward. Then also just an example of how things change over time. If you see county supplied coding for data migration 10,000, that was a placeholder, and that was a guess on my part based on my experience in projects like this. And you'll see that the county then came in with 13,340. They might still be able to do it for 10, but we don't know. So that's an example of an evolving project. Okay, moving on. Our towing services are flat. Software maintenance, you'll see that it went down to 5,900. That's an example of those expenses moving over to our IT department where they rightfully should be under the direction of our IT director. Changing pages to 143. I always note garage door repair because we have $4,000 in there. We are in and out of our police garage 100 times a day. And if you cycled your garage door at home 100 times a day, eventually it's going to break. So we do break those springs. And when we do, they're really good to us and get right out and get it fixed so we can access our cars and service our calls. Nothing interesting in garbage, water, sewage, electricity, janitorial, building and grounds. But there is one thing, don't flip just yet, boss, 143, radio maintenance agreement. Our police radios are digital. We run our own system. We're not in a collaboration with the county or the state or anybody else. We have a small, very effective, very well-working system in the city, but it's under no maintenance agreement. And in a technological, arrangement like that, it's a lot easier and less expensive to maintain it than to fix it or to do emergency patches and run around. And plus, we can't afford to ever be out of radio communications. We just can't. Our radios have to work all the time, like our garage doors, but even more importantly. And so this radio maintenance agreement would include tuning of all of our radios. Like any computer, they'll get a little, computer goofy inside if they're not maintained. So this company would be able to maintain all of not just the radios on our hips or in our cars, but the infrastructure, the antennas, the voter, all of the relays around town that really make our system work well. And so I think that's money well spent, and that's something that should have been in place all along. Page 144. I just take note that gasoline is flat. We're not anticipating huge increases in that. Telephone went from 135 to 3,000. The $3,000 is cell phone allowance for those of us that are required to stay on call all the time. We get a small city stipend to help offset the cost of having a cell phone. And the rest of that cell phone expense is going to IT. Information technology will manage that from here on out. And then I will call up Captain Carrico to discuss our digital storage line item on the bottom of 144. He was involved in the procurement of our video cameras and our body cameras, like what I'm wearing here. And the way it got confusing like this is by the city always chasing the best deal, which we always do, because we want to be good stewards of the public funds. And so as that industry sort of migrated, the way we approached it and paid for it changed too. So I'm going to let him explain it.
Thank you. I'll try and be quick. So we implemented our body camera program in about 2018. When we did that, we bought 8 body worn cameras along with 7 in-car cameras. I don't remember the cost, but as you purchase the hardware, you still have to purchase the software. Then you have to purchase the maintenance agreements, and then when the maintenance agreements run out, you have to actually fix the thing. So Motorola came up with a lease program. So as we were phasing out our owned cameras, we started using the lease program. And so if you notice the big increase in 5600, that is actually an increase from those numbers came last year from 7480. So it basically balanced itself out this year. This is the last year that we actually own a camera, which is one of the in-car cameras. So this budget year we'll have lease of all of our cameras, and that includes all the storage, all the maintenance. If we break a camera, all we have to do is send the pieces in, and they'll replace it within a week or two. So it's a much better deal on the back end. Any questions?
So all our officers have body cams now, or?
So that's actually in the budget. We're asking for 6 more body cameras for the CERT team. So on a big operation right now, our CERT members don't have their own body cameras, which could be a problem because they're the ones going into the buildings, into the houses, potentially using force or de-escalating. So it's really important for them to have the cameras when they get to the office. But as of now, most of those are being used by patrol guys, and they're not guaranteed cameras when they come in on a call out.
Why aren't, don't you think it's important that they all have body cams?
Yes, all of our patrol guys have body cameras 24 hours a day. We don't have enough currently to supply our CERT team members. If 6 of them come in right now, there's not enough cameras. That's why we're asking for 6 more cameras this year.
Acronym SURF.
CERT team, Special Emergency Response Team.
Like SWAT.
Yep. Let me see. Are we there yet? Okay, so you'll also notice 5600 filming of department records. That's a typo. That should be $1,600, not $16,000.
Oh,
Is that something we can?
oh, that's a big change.
Yeah, we can change it however you want to change it.
Acknowledging the CAD RMS cost increase.
All right.
Questions?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Just to further explain to your question, it's not one-to-one assignment on body cameras. They share them. We just need to have enough in the pool that one's available when they check them out. Page 145, the captain just spoke to our typo in filming of department records. I chalked that up to new system and probably my typing. DUI training conference, if you go partway down, so we'll talk travel, food, and lodging. Police work is inherently travel, or not travel, but training heavy. We have all kinds of requirements. There are specialty things out there that require specialty training. And you'll see that this list is long. It's long. And some of these trainings are fairly expensive, depending on the nature of it. But much of it's required for us to maintain our certifications. The captain, the sergeant, and myself have to receive leadership training hours required by DPSST, or the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, the State Police Academy. And they don't provide that. You have to go out and get it on yourself. So we achieve that through our Chiefs Association. So the DUI training conference partway down, we have it's only $968, but we have in the past had some success in getting scholarships for that through Oregon Department of Transportation. And so we do try and look for any opportunity to slide into training for cheap or reduced cost and free training that might come around occasionally. I'd be happy to answer any question. Most of this training is pretty self-explanatory, but I'll pause for questions.
What was that corrected number again on at the top of 145?
Filming of department records was $1,600.
Oh, okay.
And just a little further explanation about what that is. That's our old records when they're transferred from paper to microfilm. If we didn't do that process, we'd need 4 police departments to hold all of the reports that are on paper over there.
Notice we budgeted a little bit for women in law enforcement training. How many women do we have on the force right now?
We have 3 female police officers, and that is training specific to their individual needs. And it's really a fulfilling and encouraging training for them to go attend, for them to further their careers. On page 146, I draw your attention about 2 inches down to the Police One online training portal. It's only $2,610, but that's our online training platform where we can assign trainings, we can propagate directives or policy changes or whatever we want, and then have that accountability for who has watched the training or taken the test or read the new policy update. So that's been a huge help for us to manage the things that we're required to do, like annual ethics training or bloodborne pathogens or whatever it might be. We can generally do that. And for what we get out of it, that's practically free. Also call your attention to tuition reimbursement, about 5/8 of the way down the page. That's a line item for if we have a officer or other employee who elects to pursue higher education or college degree that aligns with their job function in the city. Per the city policy, we would reimburse tuition on that. We have done that in the past. An officer got a master's degree, the city reimbursed for it. So we want to have that available if we need it. Are we going to use it? It just depends on what people want to do. Page 147, under the CERT team, the captain mentioned the body-worn charge, the additional body cameras, and there's a body-worn camera charging station in there as well to keep them. The batteries, frankly, don't last that long. They need to make it back to the charger and download pretty frequently. And then I mentioned earlier that our reserve program was going to be on hiatus, and you'll see that we had last year 3,100, and this year we've proposed nothing.
Can I ask what less lethal beanbags are? Ball supplies.
We can convert a shotgun into a less lethal round that fires instead of a slug or pellets, basically a beanbag for if somebody's non-compliant or if we need to break a window from a distance, we can use that tool for it. And those supplies are relatively expensive. It's sort of falling out of favor with all of the other tools that are available, but we still do have them. So page 148 under clothing, external load-bearing vests. You'll see that's what I'm wearing today, 7,500. We generally figure we're going to replace about 5 of those a year. They do wear out and get dirty because it's on the outside all the time. I washed mine for this presentation, but they do get bad. Same thing with soft body armor. Inside this vest is ballistic panels that'll stop at least what I carry in terms of firearm. And so those panels are expensive too, although that has been something that's come down in price a little bit. Uniform badge replacement still exists in this budget. We think we may possibly get that done this year. As you recall from last year's budget presentation, we wanted to replace our badges. They're just scraped, and they're constantly in service. And the pins break off, and it was just time for a new look on that. And so those have been ordered. We went through a competitive bidding process. We selected one. We had them build us a demo badge. It wasn't great. We changed vendors. We got one that was great, and now they're on order. So that may not come to fruition in the upcoming budget. We might get it done sooner. Page 149. I call your attention to miscellaneous expenses, your favorite term, sir. Only this one actually says what it does. For officer buyout, I want to show there's $50,000 there. Under state law, if we have a officer that wants to come to our department from another department in their first 3 years of employment, there's a graduated scale in how much we have to pay that department back, essentially repaying them for the training investment that they made in that officer, because we would not then have to do that. So that's available for us if we find ourselves in that position, and we may or we may not. Also, I talked about the drone coming off the board and that we had an opportunity to seek grants for it. And if you'll see a little bit lower, it says grant revenue award placeholder, $50,000. It doesn't have to be the drone. That could be something else that if we found an opportunity via a grant, we need to have that plugged in the budget. So we have that showing in the budget so we could then expend it. Still moving along, page 150. At the top, you'll see 2 marked SUV patrol vehicles, $147,000. I think the city manager mentioned earlier that that's really is the cost for 2. The upfitting on a patrol car is like almost $20,000 by the time we get all of our police equipment in it to turn it from a regular SUV or sedan into an actual police one. And then I also already mentioned that we're going to collaborate with facilities on the unmarked car. And then, of course, at the very bottom, you'll see the equipment itemization for $20,000. That correlates to the drone that we've already spoken about, the $20,000 that's come out of the budget. And then I want to talk about the taser purchase a little bit more. I recognize it's a large number. It's planned. It's been on the table. And in my professional experience, I think there's 2 items of equipment that we can't do this job without anymore. One of them's a taser and the other one's a body camera, especially in this city. So the new tasers come with all kinds of new functionality and far greater range. So tasers save lives. If you're ever wondering what we're spending our money on, it's saving lives out there, because people that would otherwise be shot oftentimes can be tased. And so that's why we're doing that. I'll take questions on the police budget. That's the last page of that.
I've got a question about the equipment itemization. Is that some sort of special program that's done that requires extra expenditures, or is usually itemizations are done internally and you just count up your stuff? So just notice $20,000 is a bit for that.
Yeah, that was the drone.
That was the drone.
That was the
Okay,
drone.
that was the drone.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, will upgrading the communication technology result in improved officer safety?
Yeah, just to come back to that, because that's a well thought out question. It'll do a lot, and it'll do more than just that. New communications equipment, like for instance in our CAD system, computer aided dispatch, if we have a location of concern or a place where I want to designate it as a 2-officer only response, that lives in CAD. If we have somebody who is known to be assaultive to police or a violent person, they have an entry in the violent person file, we'll discover that through CAD. So the better awareness of what you have going on around you, the more timely the information is and the more accurate the information is, it keeps our officers safe and it keeps our community safe while we're out there working amongst them. So yes, to answer your question, for sure, but it does more than that too. CAD and RMS together will enable us to do analytics that we have no way of doing now, including evidence-based policing that can tell us where our calls for service are, when our calls for service occur, and where we should be staffing and what hours we should be working. And so it'll give us that objective look at it rather than just my opinion of when and where we should be and where we should be patrolling.
And citizen safety.
As well. So clearly, if we have access to accurate information at our fingertips through a intuitive modern platform that's not difficult for the officers to use, and they can use it to the fullest extent of it, it helps us help the public, and it helps us keep people safe, recognize when people are wanted and cars are stolen, and all sorts of other information as well.
Excellent response. Thank you.
I would imagine it would also cut down on time for discovering information.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know,
Improved
it's
efficiency.
a return on investment in public safety is hard to put your finger on, and time return If we have an elegant and intuitive way to write police reports that harvests the data that the dispatcher brought in, puts it into our report before we get it, before we even get to it, and we can reuse that information, there's a possibility that we can do that more quickly, but it'll be an evolution. We're going to have to learn the new system. We're going to have to adopt it and adapt to it, and get to all of the bells and whistles out of it in order to really get the truest, most value for our money.
Counselor Richardson, did you have a question?
I sure do. Thank you. This is a non-budgetary question, but I suspect you have a thought or two on it, Chief. You quoted the number of about 18,500 calls for service. Where is that relative to a city our size? Would you expect it to be at about that number, higher, lower?
It's on the higher end. It's on the higher end. For instance, Pendleton would be, slightly lower than us. I believe Prineville is too. So those are the calls for service that they manage to put into the CAD system. And so that's how they get recorded and tallied. There's also calls that come in where the dispatcher goes, yeah, I already heard, and hangs up. So there may be many, many more than that, but these are the ones that got entered into the CAD, responded to, we took notes on it, or we wrote a report and made an arrest maybe. But that's calls for service straight off the phone line.
Yep.
Before we move on, we did not discuss an end time for the meeting tonight. How far are we along in our expectation for the business tonight?
Generally by 8 o'clock is kind of the demarcation, but let's take a pause and ask, does anyone need a restroom break? Okay, yes. So let's take a 5-minute.
It's 10 to 8 now, so.
Well, we need to discuss that. Do we want to go beyond the 8 o'clock? How far are we into the process? Where are we at?
So one of my ideal objectives for the evening would be to get through the general fund tonight, and that will allow us to focus on some of the enterprise funds we have tomorrow night: library, airport, and public works. That we have code. We had code enforcement and animal control after this, followed by IT, general services, and then some of the other uses and tourism promotion fund. So I would encourage us to rally.
That's a heavy load there, Mr. City Manager.
It's up to you guys. It's your call.
The 5-minute break.
10.
Request a 5-minute break.
I'd say 10 because
10-minute.
There's no way we're going to get through that by 8 o'clock.
Do we go through?
Not by 8 o'clock, no.
Let's set the 8:30 time as the end time so we can kind of plan. All right, everyone agreement?
Yep.
So we'll take a 10-minute, go to 8:30 and we'll pause.
All right.
All right, let's call this meeting back to order. And we'll continue and complete the
Stand up.
police.
Anytime, doesn't matter. Limit.
Is it working now? There we go. Okay, the next budget, if you recall, my introduction to the police department, I mentioned that we're also responsible for codes enforcement and animal control, which do have their own separate budgets or sub budgets is the way I like to think of it. For codes enforcement on page 151, page 151. This is also a general fund budget, and it is $338,000. So I look at page 152 for their accomplishments. As you recall, the council approved a second codes enforcement officer in July of 2024. We recruited, hired, and trained that individual. He's on duty with us now. And you'll see the increases in the amount of work done in the codes enforcement section, which really focuses on quality of living problems and nuisance properties and vehicles within the community. And so the police department handles the criminal stuff, and the neighborhood blight is handled through codes enforcement. In the last year, they opened 363 complaint-driven cases for investigations. Now, a case could be like my neighbor doesn't cut their grass, or their yard is full of old refrigerators, or whatever the case may be. That was an increase of 25%. And they scrapped 146 junk cars. 140, those cars didn't cost us a thing to scrap. We have contacts with towing companies, and they'll haul those cars off for free for the city once we've completed our process for the junk value or the scrap value of the cars. So that's 146 cars that would otherwise be sitting on the streets of the Dalles looking like blight. They tagged 509 cars and towed 49 abandoned vehicles, 10 of which were RVs. Which was an increase of 58%, and they conducted 441 problem property inspections, or an increase of 17%. Posted 38 properties for nuisance abatement and abated 13 properties. Why you see that trend line go down there, there's a whole lot of legal process and communications. Anybody that has their property abated means that the city is going to come on their property with a warrant and clean it up for them, and then place a lien against that property. And so we want to make sure that everybody has every opportunity to take care of their own business, and the people that quite simply won't will go through the abatement process, which is done by codes and oftentimes in collaboration with police officers on scene as well. Also went through a process with the Union Pacific Railroad, and we got an agreement to be able to fly our drone over their property with their permission if we need to. We haven't done it yet. Again, it's a $338,000 budget, looking on page 153, most of which is salaries, and then some contracted services. So if you switch to page 154, towing of RVs is a particular concern in the community. We find people that get derelict RVs on the city streets. That's a codes violation to live in them and abandon them and let your things fall out of them all over the city. So $10,000 on that other contractual services line item. And then transient camp cleanups is something that's a growing piece of business for them and us. They're estimating about 50 camps can be cleaned up next year for $30,000. The city does contract with local junk removal companies that have the people and the equipment to come in and abate those camps when they're on city property or somewhere that's causing blight within the city. So absent this line item, you would see a lot more junk around the town. That's all the interesting stuff about codes enforcement, except for we have 2 people there now instead of just 1. That was added last year.
Question for you.
Hmm?
This past year, we had issues with not the quality of code enforcement, but the hours that they worked. Or is that we had issues with the hours that they worked. They worked Monday through Friday, and a number of the residents who were complaining about Airbnb noise, all of this, it always happened on the weekends. And so we all remember this. It was a big to-do, and the city looked at their amending that ordinance for Airbnbs. Do we have then a code enforcer that will work on the weekend, or is it still so that if there are issues with noise abatement or anything on that order on weekends, that we end up just calling the non-emergency number?
So two things on that. Number one, noise complaint is a city ordinance, but that wouldn't fall under codes enforcement necessarily. That's probably a police response on that. If it's a loud party or somebody just blaring their stereo, a police officer will respond on that. And secondarily, asking whether codes enforcement are available on the weekends, the answer is yes, they are. I think you'll find some of our transient merchants that come through town and sell flags or fruit or, I don't know, popcorn or ice cream or whatever they sell on the streets. They do have to have a permit to vend on the city property. And they tend to come out on the weekends thinking that codes enforcement isn't there, and they're wrong because they are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All these increases that are depicted at the top of page 152 that's all directed toward our new, the fact that we've essentially doubled our personnel. I mean, that's why those increases are there, right? It's not because our communities.
No, it's not because the community is falling apart. I think that they're going from the worst of the worst to just the worst in these cases. They're certainly not out there seeking out marginal cases or something like, maybe they'll cut it tomorrow, like for around their grass or their bushes. They're still constant, persistent, complaint-driven nuisance properties around town. And so, yeah, it is primarily because we have more people doing it, but the amount of work has not slowed down for them. Right. Nobody's resting on their laurels over at the codes department. So page 156 is animal control, another general fund budget, sub budget within the police department for $186,000. Any questions? The animal control hasn't really changed, to be honest with you. We have the same animal control officers last year. The one line item that, of course, is concerning for a lot of people is veterinarian services for $6,000. We do sometimes come into contact with animals that have been struck or neglected or abused. And the city does have a moral obligation to render veterinary care for them. And so that's what that money covers. For instance, a couple of kittens went down to the vet today via animal control that were extremely abused and neglected. So other than that, it's pretty much business as usual in animal control. You'll recall that last year, or possibly even the year before, we did procure and acquire a new animal control vehicle, which you see out around the community. It has air conditioning for our hot days to keep the animals safe. And it's just been a very big improvement for the program. Okay. That'll do it for me then. Thank you for your attention and
Wow.
Thanks, Chief.
appreciate it.
Next.
Next, I'd ask you to turn to page 160. This is our IT department, and I hope Mr. Collins is still behind me. There he is to present this section here.
Thank you. I'll be going over the IT department budget tonight. I'm David Collins, if you haven't met me yet. One item to note with this change, my department has been growing, so we have increased to 4 total people now, including myself. We've added a new network administrator as our last position. With that, the next piece on here, most of the increases that you'll see, as mentioned previously before, is we've been looking to consolidate the technology, especially with the general funds under my department. So a lot of the changes have been transfers from the various general funds departments into my departments. I'm happy to talk about those. I may have to pull in department heads to talk about any specifics if you have questions around those. And then just one other item to note as well, due to security reasons, I'm not going to be going into specific vendors or names of solutions. I'd be happy to discuss them from a high level and go through their case usage and if there's any other specific questions around those.
You guys have a website redesign and hosting contract. It looks like $6,000 of that is annually. So I'm guessing the $25,000 was a project for website renewal.
Yes, we're looking at
24.
a new website redesign. Yep.
So that's a proposal. All right.
Dave, sorry, Chair.
Just a quick question and under, if we're looking at I'm looking at page 162 and I'm looking at Blue Mountain 1100 times 12. What is that 1100 times 12 and why are we contracting with Blue Mountain?
Yes, so that is part of the free Wi-Fi solution here within town. That's
Oh,
the
I see.
internet we're using for that on the back end.
So they're handling that now. It was GorgeNet.
They're providing the service. We have a new project going through that's redoing our Wi-Fi here in town.
Understood. Okay.
And Blue Mountain Networks acquired and has absorbed
GorgeNet, I know.
GorgeNet.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I just didn't know what that meant.
Why isn't Google providing that for us?
So Google, I believe, provided support for the initial deployment of the Wi-Fi project back in 2000.
Yes, they did. I think it was
2000,
160,000.
2005, 2006.
They had to get it up and running, but it was not
Right.
theirs.
Why? I mean,
Right. I mean,
Will they do it again?
I think there's the whole host of questions around why not. Google does provide different grants to agencies throughout the community. Then later on, there's actually a couple notations in a following fund about monies that Google is providing to support different projects. I think one of the dynamics with the Wi-Fi project is that the Wi-Fi project was built and deployed, and then maintenance was somewhat lacking, and the system, frankly, just wasn't working. And that was that ongoing expense that the city needed to really shoulder to make sure on an ongoing basis it was actually a usable system. And so, as Josh Chandler mentioned earlier tonight, one of our rare volunteers worked on that project, and we're continuing to make sure that we support it so it stays functional. It could be something that we could submit a request to Google. I think as a recurring expense, it's maybe not that competitive, frankly. Some of the other projects that I'll go into, I think, has more of that aspect to it. Any other questions on the IT budget?
Just the clarification that times 12 in both the PUD and Blue Mountain, I assume that's for 12 different nodes that you guys plan to deploy?
Access.
Perfect.
That's
Thank
a
you.
monthly cost for a year.
Yep. Thank you. Just wanted to get clarification for me and the public who are listening.
Anything else?
I'm still looking over a lot of expenses. Give me just a second.
Okay.
This is my thing. So.
Oh, gosh.
Thorough.
Okay. In the end of year support replacements, I assume those are just PCs, or I don't think that's a server expense in there on the 42,000 on page 165.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir, you're correct.
Okay.
One question, the computer equipment increase to 70K is indicative of absorbing the work from other departments, right? Like replacing laptops and things.
The computer, those are for projects actually in particular. There's a new storage that we're looking at getting this next year, as well as creating a conference room for one of the rooms here.
Do you know if there's any plans for not this fiscal year but soon upcoming fiscal years to replace server equipment by any chance?
Yeah, we do have a plan. Our virtualization cluster is coming up for renewal. So we'll be putting that in next couple of years.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Hopefully the chips are a little bit cheaper by then, but we'll see.
Yes, have to see how pricing goes.
don't see anything else. All right. Ben, do you have any questions down there? Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So if we're continuing to push on,
We are continuing to push on. We're at 15 after 16.
okay, I'd like to turn to page 166. This is our General Service Department. This is broken out by the services it provides to some of the various funds and facilities we have here, most notably City Hall, the Police Department, Police Building, the Library, and the State Office Building. This is one of those areas that we've seen some staffing increase with a facility supervisor. And so we're starting to see some of these longer term maintenance projects start to move forward. One of the ones that are most notable that is moving forward as we speak is replacement of the 1968 or 1978 HVAC unit at the library. That's something that's been in discussion for quite some time. And with the support of the facilities department and our facility supervisor, we're actually seeing forward progress on that project. There's also been quite a few different projects throughout the campuses that we have here with improvements to City Hall, the police department's break or kitchen area. The Lewis and Clark Park is looking pretty good. And we're continuing to monitor and work with our contractor on the downtown street tree project and have a more successful year this year. There's going to be some dynamics and changes, not necessarily in this budget, but I anticipate in the upcoming budget as the first streetscaping project moves forward along with the Federal Street Plaza. And so again, it's been a focus of mine and staff here to not just focus on those one-time costs on the front end, but as we build things, as we prepare things, new projects, new initiatives, and things like that, we want to make sure that we're allocating the funds needed to maintain them, keep them looking good, keep them functional, from the Wi-Fi project to the downtown street trees and more. And so on pages 170, you'll see some of the detail there with the different equipment and service needs of the department. It's relatively straightforward and flat, more or less, for this year. I will make note, though, on page 171 under vehicles, there's a proposal for a Kubota and a Leaf Goat. These are two pieces of equipment that will assist the facilities department going forward. I'll also note that there's $5,000 budgeted for the downtown banners for street trees. The street lights downtown are kind of interesting and dynamic. There are a plethora of banners that have been purchased over the years. We want to replace some of those, give them a fresh, new, clean look, and make sure the brackets on those street lights actually have banners on them. And this is kind of a continuing effort, even with the downtown holiday decorations in partnership with Northern Wasco County Parks and Rec to give those a refresh. Those are the same decorations, but they have new LED light strings, new garland. And Parks and Rec was able to help us with that project. And again, if we're going to have these things, let's keep them looking nice, fresh. The roundabout is another initiative kind of in that same area. And so that's how we approach this budget and how to support those efforts. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this one.
Questions? Let's move on.
Matthew, sorry, I'm going to ask one.
Let's back the bus.
Why is FTE 1.2 under general services when facility says 3.0? Why am I, sorry, page 166.
So that is how it's broken out. And what I mean by that is how it's broken out amongst the various departments and funds. So we attribute some of the staff costs, for example, for the facilities team to the state office building fund.
Got it.
So you'll see that reflected in some of those different areas.
Thank you very much.
Brenda, other uses.
So on page 172, this is the other uses fund. This includes charges for services or special payments. Most notable here is we do have an agreement with Mid-Columbia Fire and Rescue, where we provide and allocate some of the enterprise zone dollars we receive to support the development of their fire training tower and some of the debt associated with that development, as well as a volunteer and paramedic program that they have. For operating transfers out, these are funding other operating funds of the city. The first one there is that transfer of $65,000 to the airport fund.
in partnership with Klickitat County. That's the ongoing support that we provide to the Columbia Gorge Regional Airport. Jeff Renard is our airport manager there, and he will give a presentation probably tomorrow night. And he has been working really hard to develop the airport into a self-sustaining fund. But while those efforts continue, we want to make sure we support the airport. The second item there is to the street fund, and I want to note there's an error here. The amount listed on page 172 is $400,000. That amount should be $600,000. That's not a budget change because we did budget $600,000. It's just a change to the narrative. Part of the reason we continue to transfer to the street fund is to support operations there and continue to target the pavement management index rating that we look at. The street and street maintenance is always something, or sometimes is something that is overlooked or forgotten. It's that maintenance, ongoing maintenance, and staying ahead of deterioration is critical in the life of our streets. The PMI, or the pavement management index rating that we use, helps guide how we allocate resources and what we're trying to achieve there. And so in order to maintain that level, not to improve it, but to really maintain that level, these transfers from the general fund are critical. The second item there, again, from a capital maintenance perspective, we'll be transferring $1.5 million into the capital projects fund, again, to support the ongoing needs of the different city facilities and catch up on deferred maintenance. We'll also be transferring $3.5 million in change to the special grant fund that's associated with the Federal Street Plaza. That is not the total cost of the plaza. The total cost of the plaza is just under $5 million. We've applied to a wide assortment of grants to support that project, probably a little less than 1.5 million in total grants, either secured or pending. And this transfer is necessary to support the remainder of the project. And then the last item here is $12,351 will be transferred to our unemployment fund for the unemployment needs of the entire city. And so that's a relatively modest amount, but wanted to make note of that as well. Any questions with other uses?
I just want to point out the contingency is at the bottom there. It's consistently 10% or something. You see what I'm talking about?
You're on page 174 at the bottom there? Correct.
Comes to about 18% of the total expenditures, but I noticed the contingency usually talks about operating expenses. Does that not include capital? You talk about operating?
I may have to double check the math on that to get back to you on that.
And just for clarification, what is that contingency line item? Is that just the remainder of the funds or the rough amount of budget near the end for someone new to budgeting or anyone else listening in the public?
Yeah, so contingency, and I think part of the mayor's question is again, some of the guiding philosophies that we have, fiscal philosophies there, fiscal principles, I should say, where we maintain 10% of the budget here as a contingency for unexplained or unexpected expenses or emergencies of that nature. And so I'll double check that math there and get back to all of you probably tomorrow night on the 1.2 million on the end of page 174.
Thank you.
Matthew, do we have anything that can fit in within 4 minutes? Another report?
Yes. I'm lying to you, but yes.
Do you accountable?
No, I mean, okay, so we're on page 175. This is the tourism fund. We've spoken about this a little bit already, adjacent to the city council budget. So that's why I'm hopeful here, but we'll see how it goes. Specifically, if I can have you turn to page 178. And another reference is the handout that we gave at the beginning here, the transient lodging tax handout. You'll see here at the top of the page, 40,000 for Fort Dalles displays. That was a request. We have provided about $25,000 a year for the fireworks show for the last several years, I should say. kind of two dynamics there is, every year the show gets a little bit smaller as costs go up. But also next year, because this money is not for this coming 4th of July, that's already been budgeted in the current budget. This is for July 4th, 2026. July 4th, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the United States. And so to support that celebration, there's this additional amount for this coming cycle. We also have a placeholder of $450,000 for the tourism promotion contract. As I noted earlier, we're going through an RFP, request for proposal process for that contractor. That award for that contract should be coming before City Council on June 2nd. We also have the AutoCast app, host compliance software, and the tourism opportunity projects, as I mentioned previously, along with Sister Cities, Cruise Ship Dock, and the Discovery Center, Fort Dalles Museum, and Bike Hub possibility. And so if you turn to page 179, there's another summary sheet here that we might include in a different place in the budget next year. But this represents all of the requests that we received and a nice handy kind of summary table there. And that's the Tourism Promotion Fund. Again, that's the new fund that's going to receive all of the transient lodging tax. It's Fund 2. The expenditures directly placed in this fund are looking at it through the lens of tourism, a tourism-related facility, promotion and advertising. And then at the very bottom of 178, you'll see that transfer to the general fund, which is what lands in the City Council budget.
Question. For the Discovery Center and the museum for $200,000, sounds like that is part of the repair of the HVAC
Correct.
system in the Discovery Center.
Correct. So there's some very preliminary conversations around the ongoing support and management of the Fort Dalles Museum with Wasco County and the City of the Dalles, and if there may be an opportunity to combine resources with the Discovery Center, who is a museum as well and has a lot of that expertise and focus. And with that potential change, which is we're still working through a lot of the dynamics there, can the city and the county assist with the HVAC unit at the Discovery Center and that transition period? And so this $200,000 earmarked is what the city would contribute, and the county would do likewise.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes,
Matthew, I don't remember what the tourism opportunity projects.
So the tourism opportunity projects is my split between trying to stay away from the word miscellaneous and reserve it in some other way. So the tourism opportunity projects is really, and we can work on these naming conventions here, but again, as this is a new fund, TLT revenues do go up and down in a given year, trying to give a little bit of breathing room with that whole cash flow dynamic. And apparently neither of those words work, so I'll try to think of something else.
we have reached 8:30 and due to I honor my word, so we will now pause the proceedings tonight. We will take up tomorrow night with the library fund.
We'll do yes, thank you. Sorry.
Library funds will start and we'll see how we progress tomorrow night, but we'll follow similar time. If we go beyond 8:30, then we'll go ahead and pause to go on to Wednesday. Hopefully we can cover everything tomorrow night. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Then tonight is not adjourned, it's postponed, or we are moving it to tomorrow night.
Recessing.
We're recessing.